We're ready? All right. I'm sorry, guys. It is 6:31. We'll call this meeting to order. Miss Jennifer? Oh, I'm sorry. Miss Jennifer has had some allergy problems where she's losing her voice. Dan, would you like to lead us in prayer?
Sure. Bow our heads. Thank you, Lord, for this blessed day. Lord, as we come together, help us make wise choices for our community that ultimately benefit us all and reflect your glory. In Christ's name we pray.
Amen. Floyd, do you want to do some of the pledges? I did that on purpose.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. There we go. All right. Folks, like I always say in all meetings, rules of decorum are in effect. Okay? Calm voices, professional attitude, and treat each other with respect. I don't think we really need to say that each and every time, but unfortunately, things happen to where we have to remind everybody of that. Nobody's opinion is less than anybody else's. Okay? We can agree to disagree and still be neighbors. We don't have to be hateful. Just remember that when we talk tonight. All right, before we open citizens' comments, we have a proclamation, I don't know if everybody knows, but this is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Let me start over. Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So if the representatives from Women in Need and anybody else that's here for this proclamation come to the front, I get to do that always whereas things where I say it many times. All right. All right, the proclamation is for Domestic Violence Awareness Month. In the city of McLendon-Chisholm, in recognition of the important work done by survivors, domestic violence programs, and victim service providers, I would also be an active part of the elimination of intimate partner violence. Whereas, in this one day across the United States and territory, nearly 75,000 victims of domestic violence sought services from domestic violence programs and shelters. That same day, more than 9,000 requests for services, including emergency shelter, housing, transportation, child care, and legal representation, could not be provided because programs lack the resources needed. Whereas the impact of domestic violence is wide-ranging, directly affecting individuals and society as a whole, here in this community and throughout the United States and the world. Whereas domestic violence includes not only physical abuse, but also mental abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse, isolation, and sexual violence. And whereas people of all ages and all stages of their lives are victims of domestic violence, and whereas the need for resources and safe shelter, such as what Women in Need provide, continues to be rated by survivors and victims. And whereas McLendon-Chisholm joins with others across Texas and the nation for the victims of domestic violence, as well as local programs, state coalitions, national organizations, and other agencies nationwide who are committed to increasing public awareness of domestic violence and a clear message to abusers that domestic violence is not tolerated and impacts children. And whereas domestic violence impacts millions of people each year, it can be prevented. Preventing domestic violence requires a collective voice and power of individuals, families, institutions, and systems. Each whose support as a valuable and powerful component in this movement. Now, therefore, I, to be sure, Mayor of the City of McLendon-Chisholm, do hereby proclaim October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month for McLendon-Chisholm. Now, also in addition to that, we want to honor Women in Need in their 40th anniversary. Congratulations. All right. Folks, remember what I said about decorum, because we're about to get into citizens' comments. First up, Mr. Kippett.
Let's see if this is settled. Mark Kippett, 31 Fireside Drive, McLendon-Chisholm. Before I start, I just want to say that which binds us together as a community, go Rangers. Good luck in the World Series. Bring it home. Trust is an essential element that enables a free society to function. It's the very bedrock of our nation. Think about it. Trust is essential when we buy food, put gas in our vehicles, or take a commercial flight. We trust RCH to deliver safe water used by our families. Trust determines the efficiency of our relationships. Now imagine what happens when trust is eroded. It would negatively impact every aspect of our lives, at home, at work, or at play. A few weeks ago, with the encouragement by several in this room, Keith met with David Naylor to determine if RCH and our city could move forward. Keith reached out his hand in a trusting fashion. And what did David Naylor do? He secretly recorded the meeting with a specific intention of generating future leverage. That day, he broke trust with Keith, and in my view, he disrespected the citizens of McLendon-Chisholm. What could have been a fruitful meeting to forge common way ahead has turned into a circus because David Naylor deceived all of us. Furthermore, not only did he deceive us, but by agreeing to the meeting, he appeared to have violated the terms and conditions of the agreement RCH had with AGWA, both the exclusivity elements and the representations and warranty. He potentially exposed RCH. Tonight, Council will decide if it wants to withdraw the PUC application, agenda item 7.5. Each of you has a decision to make, but I encourage each of you to examine your motives and those advising you. It is an important milestone in our city, both past and future. Here's the bottom line. If you vote to withdraw the PUC application, you're backing RCH. And if next summer we still have no relief, then to invoke the Colin Powell rule that he told President Bush prior to the invasion of Iraq, you break it, you own it. Yet there is another reason to pause. On 20 September, I filed an open records request with RCH for documents, including tax returns or state filings, that allows RCH to operate as a nonprofit, tax-exempt entity. On the 4th of October, RCH acknowledged that they could not locate any such documents or records that were asked for in my request. They enclosed a copy of a recent audit, which the accountant who conducted the audit admitted was not a true audit, but actually a cash flow analysis. And also, with exquisite timing, RCH attached a web-based filing from late August, filed immediately after the purchase agreement was signed with AGWA to the Texas Secretary of State for Domestic Nonprofit Corporate Status. The state replied to this, stating, this exemption verification is not a substitute for complete exemption certificates that are required when claiming exemption from Texas taxes. It does not even address the federal liabilities that are difficult to assess because there are no records. RCH stated that they would provide a final response on 19 October. On Thursday of last week, I received a single-page letter stating RCH could not locate any other documents. They added a statement that these documents may be in the possession of H2O. I've provided both of these documents to the City Secretary. RCH Board has a fiduciary responsibility to protect the business assets and the members' interests by preserving and safeguarding all records of a corporation. Furthermore, the Board has a responsibility to oversee and manage risk and opportunity, sustainability, and protect the reputation of RCH. The Board did not meet their obligations in either of these aspects. Yes, H2O is responsible, but not solely responsible. The question we need to be asking ourselves is, why is RCH not doing now to hold H2O accountable? And there are real ramifications at stake. These extend to the ability to reach agreements with other organizations in the local area to resolve any water issues, the ability to secure capital needed to address basic infrastructure, and the risk to existing RCH capital that could be required to cover potential back taxes. Trust is essential.
Mr. Kippett, you've hit your 5-minute time limit.
All right, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, I apologize. Sometimes it's a little hard for me to read handwriting. The last name, Dean. Yes, sir. I was having a hard time reading your first name.
So, Rich Dean, 708 Kensington Drive, McLendon-Chisholm. Regarding the RCH and McLendon-Chisholm issue, I received a flyer in the mail. We're 73% of the people that responded to a survey were in favor of McLendon-Chisholm taking over RCH. And I just had questions about that. Where did the survey come from? What were the questions on the survey? When was the survey taken? Who paid for the survey? And why did they pay for the survey? Was one of the questions, would you like RCH and MC to work together toward a solution? That's what we want, for McLendon-Chisholm to stop undermining solutions. Lastly, I believe it is unethical, if not illegal, for a McLendon-Chisholm board member to promote the use of personal emails and phones to avoid an open records request. Thank you.
Mr. Nickel, you're next.
I'm Gary Nickel at 612 Kentwood. First, I want to thank Sherry for the outstanding work that she did in putting together a website that was intended to be a public forum where facts could be presented and read by everyone involved. And it began with good intentions, but as it devolved into speculation and personal assaults, it lost credibility, in my opinion, and for that reason, I would hope that any decisions that you on the council make are not based on what you might have read on the internet, because we all know what happens when you read stuff on the internet. So I just pray that you will be forthright and use good judgment in what you read, what you believe, and what you've learned by doing your own research. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Debris, did I say it right? Debris. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Linda Debray, 901 Campton Court. I'm going to read an email that I sent to the mayor and all the council members. I did receive an acknowledgement response from 2 council members. That was Dan Tucker and Adrian Balcom. I'm writing to you about the proposal to cancel the city's PUC application for water services. I am vehemently opposed to this. While I'm glad that the RCH sale to Aqua has been canceled, I do not have confidence that the RCH WSC can be trusted to solve our water issues, as this is the same board except for David Naylor, who is responsible for us being in this water crisis in the first place. And after Naylor joined the board, who was not transparent in how it conducted itself during the entire Aqua debacle. My HOA, Kensington Park, suffered $20,630 in repair bills due to the negligence of the RCH WSC Board of Directors. And I, at that time, I attached the receipts that my HOA has for those repairs, and after I'm done speaking, I'm going to hand them to Shelley to put in the record. Our entrance structures required at least 20 steel piers, and part of our wall collapsed and had to be rebuilt. Kensington Park faces an additional $2,000 in wall rebuild fees that will be completed in 2024. I feel that the cancellation of the city's PUC application at this time would be premature because I feel more time is needed to evaluate this entire situation, and I do not see any reason to cancel an application that the city may indeed need to have in process at a later date. Please do not vote to cancel the PUC application. The application should be allowed to move forward so this situation can play out and see what the best option ends up being. It is too soon to tell, in my opinion. I do not want to see my city council remove any options from the table at this point.
All right. I can't read your address, but first name Richard, last name, is it Brown? Okay, it's a little hard to read your writing tonight.
Good evening, Mayor. I hope you're well tonight. Council members, how y'all doing? My name's Richard Brown. I live in your ETJ. We put trust in this council to help us with our water supply company. Now it seems like certain members of the council don't want to do that. I assure you RCH cannot solve the problem. Let me tell you about my business. I run an oil and gas company that manages 84,000 acres in southeast Texas, southwest Louisiana. I farm 6,000 acres, Warren County, Mississippi, Concordia Parish, Louisiana. I run 2 nonprofits, and I'm a managing director of a real estate development company in Monroe, Louisiana. I know people that can do business. These people can't. It's the same people that screwed it up. This is your one chance to provide water use for your citizens at the cheapest way you can do it. Any other way, you got to build a whole system, and that's a ton of money. We put trust. There's infighting going on in here. It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of. Okay? Put your pettiness aside. Do what's right for the citizens. I don't care what anybody's problem is with anybody else on the council. Put that aside and do what's right for these people, because we put our trust in you, and if you break that trust, I promise you, I will put a lot of money behind challengers, a bunch of money. Now, do what you told us you were going to do. We'd appreciate it. And Mr. Mayor, we're still praying for you, sir. That's all. Thank you.
Lorna.
Lorna Kippett, 31 Fireside Drive. I'm pretty sure I'm going to get the 5-minute gong, so I'll go quick. I here to talk about item 7.3, the adding a council member to the water committee. I forwarded you all an email earlier today with my puzzlement as to why this is even an agenda item. I looked back at all the council meeting minutes when the committee was first formed, and there were 2 members. Councilmember Tucker and Councilmember Purdy to start, and then Councilmember Westner when Councilmember Purdy resigned. Now, I'm no Nancy Drew, but it only took me about an hour to go through all these minutes and think that we might have some revisionist history here today. So I'm going to take some time and go through various council minutes and tell you all what are in those minutes. 9/27/22. The water transfer agreement between RCH and the city was passed. 11/9, the city votes to hire an outside firm to conduct due diligence of the RCH system. That motion passed. Motion was made by Tucker and seconded by McNeal. 11/9, the same meeting, the water committee was established consisting of the following: City Council Chair Tucker, City Council Member Purdy, the city administrator, and 3 residents, Mike Hatcher, Adrian Balcom, and Tony Crawford. They met first on the 15th of November. Fast forward to 1/10/23. Tucker expressed his appreciation for Balcom's work and expressed his feelings about the issues with RCH. Purdy resigns and Wesner takes over. 2/22. There was a presentation to the city council called City Operations and Maintaining a Water System. Briefers included representatives from Blackland. No council comments noted in the minutes. 3/14, update RCH MC water transfer presentation. There was a back and forth by council with a general frustration that RCH was not communicating with us. A quote from Council Member McNeal, Whatever's not working, turn up the heat. At some point, someone's got to be held accountable. I mean, this has dragged on way too long. April 11th, Balcom updates council. No questions from council. 5/24, resolution for the water transfer asset passed unanimously. 6/13, council directs city attorney to start legal action against RCH for TOMA violations. No questions, no discussion, motion passes unanimously. 7/11, notice of intent to RCH presented to council. Mayor Pro Tem presented a very in-depth chronological history of activities, of which is in the minutes. No questions from council. The motion was made by McLendon and seconded by McNeal, and the motion passed by a roll call vote. 7/25, council updated by Balcom. No questions. 8/8, things go south, with a lot of open hostility towards Mayor Pro Tem Balcom, as McNeal read from a scripted statement. McLendon took control of the meeting, and they went through all the points of Council Member McNeal's concerns. His major concern was that he hadn't seen a plan, although Mayor Pro Tem Balcom laid that plan out just 2 meetings earlier, 7/11, as annotated in the minutes. So my question remains, why do we need a second to add a person on the committee when, per official record, Balcom and Tucker are on the committee? The other item I wanted to talk to, if I have time, is withdrawing the PUC application. I think we've heard from a few speakers this evening that we think that is not a very wise decision at this point. Ask any mayor in our county, and I have. Our city needs to have control of water to control and optimize our growth. Otherwise, we'll continue to put our future in the hands of a private company who lets us down again and again. A company that has been mismanaged for decades and will go to any measures, even unethically, to damage our city. You do not have the luxury of being a private citizen when you sit behind the dais. You need to stop criticizing each other and start contributing to what's going on to be the best for our city. You took an oath to represent the citizens of McLendon-Chisholm, not the county, not Heath, not RCH, etc., etc. Please be faithful to your oath. Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me. Ms. Easter, you're next.
Okay. Hi, I'm Mrs. Easter, and I'm at 403 Wagon Court. And I'd like to speak on agenda items 7.3, 7.4, and 7.5 as they're all related. My husband and I have been acting in tandem as the HOA coordinators for city and water information for our HOA, which is Chisholm Crossing 4. And our main focus, obviously lately, has been on the water issues. The water issue is a big issue for us personally for 2 reasons. One, we have spent tens of thousands of dollars on our yard trying to plant native trees, shrubs, flowers, putting up bat boxes, trying to attract flowers, butterflies, native natural plants to attract the butterflies so they can make it all the way to Mexico on their migration. And they obviously need more water in the summer than our water service has, as we have seen in the past every single year I've lived here. More importantly, I have an autoimmune disease, which means I'm on immune suppressants every single day, which weakens my ability to fight off bacteria and pathogens. If I don't have clean, reliable water in my house, I die. I am not the only one in this situation. This is not trivial. Anyone going through chemo, and we know that we have a lot of those people in our community, babies, the elderly, anyone who's immune compromised is in this situation. If they cannot rely on the water, they can die. And I see so much triviality and pettiness around this issue, like it's some kind of game. This is not a game. And I'm far from the only person who sees it this way. We go door to door to talk to our neighbors, to communicate with them about what's going on, because a lot of people don't know. As we're walking our dogs and, you know, doing all the things that we do, everybody wants to talk about it. Everyone's pissed, and everybody wants RCH to go away. That is everyone I've talked to. I don't know that I've even talked to anybody who feels differently. And as we all know, RCH has a long, rich history of not following regulations as it relates to flushing the systems, following audits. I mean, just even the easiest stuff. How they put together their agendas. They can't even do that. Can I rely on them for reliable, clean water that I'm gonna bet my life on? Or somebody's gonna bet their grandchildren's lives on? I don't think so. So that means lots of us, either they are or they should be having to lug bottled water into their house every week, which is something that I do, because we didn't have enough water this summer. We had to lug tubs of gray water out of our house. My husband and I are from California. If there's one thing Californians can do well, is conserve water. And we have a rich history of showering, collecting that water, and using it to water your plants. That's how much I love my plants. This is how much water, or how much time of my week this takes up. It's ridiculous how much this is impacting our lives. And many of my neighbors are in the same boat because we don't want our trees to die. And I can't even tell you how many trees have died in the last 3 years in our yard. We want a reliable water operator. Not just me, everyone I've talked to. We don't have one. We haven't had one in a long time. We obviously know Aqua wasn't going to be it. I'm glad that's gone, but RCH still is not it. How much more time were we going to have to spend with RCH floundering and messing up and not doing the right thing? Are we supposed to wait until they somehow find all of their audits that are missing and all of their tax returns? Are they hidden under a rock? I mean, are we supposed to just sit around and just wait? It doesn't sound like a viable option. So I guess what I don't understand is, after seeing this thing on the agenda, is why would we do this? What is the next, what would be the other option? To cancel this application?
Ms. Easter, you hit your 5 minutes.
That's fine.
Thank you, though. Judy Moss.
Mayor, Council, I'm on a slightly different topic. My name is Judy Moss. I live at 525 League Road. Now you know where I'm going. Rezoning League Road, even a portion of it, to being a commercial area. I've lived here 30 years. I've seen many changes in our community. When we first came here, there were maybe 500 to 600 people in this community. There were rolling hills, wide open spaces of cornfields, cotton fields, just a few houses, not much. We went on. Now there's houses galore, and that's fine. That's fine. I love my people that I have met. I have met a lot of people in the new communities, the new developments, that I truly do have caring for. But those houses bring traffic, and that traffic goes up and down League Road. I don't mind the school buses and the cars. What I do mind, however, are the trucks. The trucks are tearing that road apart. All you have to do is drive down that road, and it's like a roller coaster, or it's cracking off to the side. But that's not why I'm here. Our neighborhood is not a development. We don't have an HOA, but we know each other, and we consider ourselves to be a neighborhood, just like you do in your HOA and your development. Our people have accepted almost all progress, but not the one that is being considered on League Road. We don't want that to be changed to a rezoning of commercial on that first lot that has been sold where they want to build a storage facility. Now, any other business down League Road is unacceptable as well, because that's our neighborhood, just like you live in your neighborhoods. We don't want that. People in our neighborhood didn't ask for the storage facility. I don't know where that came from. I didn't see any kind of a place where I could say, yes, I want a storage facility. But the people in our neighborhood don't use storage facilities. In fact, people from the developments come to us because we have some land and say, could you help me with this? Could you help me with that? And yes, we oblige some of them, not all, but some. But put that storage facility close to the people who really need it. Put it in their neighborhood, or not even in their neighborhood. That's not a nice place to put a storage facility. No one wants to live next to it. Would you? I don't think so. There's going to be lights at night. I don't care how many trees you put up to make it pretty. I don't care how many shrubs and flowers you plant. I don't care how many walls you build. You cannot keep that from our sight. But not only that, it's the traffic in and out. What becomes of those storage facilities? Who puts things in them? Have you seen storage facilities? I have. They've got businesses run out of them. No telling what's inside some of them. I don't know, and I really don't care. But it isn't something that goes in a neighborhood. This is our neighborhood. Think of it like this. If that first 5 acres goes into commercial, what's going to happen to the next 5 acres? And the next 5 acres? And the next 5 acres? Then you've got, I don't know what you have. Poor Brent lives across the way. He's going to have lights in his house the whole time. Of course, I'm sure he'll tell you about that. But we don't want this. This is not something to come into our life. Thank you.
Dave? I'm sorry, Michael Easter. You're next. I got 2 different sheets up here at the same time.
Well, just to start off, we're from California, but we're glad to be here. We're not those kind of folks. But anyways, I just want to thank the Mayor, City Council. I think I'm talking about a little bit something different here. I think we had this Pledge of Allegiance to both the state of Texas and the U.S. flags. The reason we did that is because these 2 governments control and protect us. We're accountable to the federal Constitution, and those protections flow down, as well as the state of Texas. And with those constitutional protections and safeguards, they apply to all of us as citizens, and they limit what you guys can do, including each other. And so one of the important things I think we need to think about as we go through this is what kind of due process requirements apply to all of you, as well as First Amendment rights for people to say what they want to say. And with respect to the due process, I think that there's in the code of ethics that all of you guys owe a sole and exclusive duty to the citizens of McLendon-Chisholm to the exclusion of everybody else, as Ms. Kippett said. And so you need to think about that as you make your decisions here. You need to identify why certain items are on the agenda, how they benefit the citizens, and how you vote benefits the citizens, not somebody else. And to the extent they benefit somebody else, to the extent and injure the citizens, that's not within your scope. And one of the issues that I wanted to talk about here that probably no one else can talk about is 7.4. With Ms. Balcom, or, you know, moving the Mayor Pro Tem out of here. And it seems to me that there's the impetus behind that is that there's a lot of animosity by Mr. McNeal who introduced that. And that animosity is pretty prevalent in the thing that he just filed with the PUC. He's entitled to do that under the First Amendment, but I don't think it's good decorum to disparage another council member. And the fact that he put this on here indicates it's punitive in nature. I think she's entitled to some due process protections. And those due process protections include the right to understand beforehand you accuse somebody, what is prohibited conduct? How would she know what's wrong with what she did beforehand? She needs to be provided the evidence that she's being accused of so she can review it and understand what the allegations are so she can defend herself. On the flip side, she needs to be able to provide evidence on her own to rebut all of these claims. And at the end of the day, I think you guys, if you're going to remove her, you have the burden of proof to demonstrate that. And then lastly, there needs to be some nexus between removing her from Mayor Pro Tem to whatever her conduct was that she needed to know beforehand that was somehow not appropriate. And that's the concern I've got, is that we're going to be back into some sort of, I don't know, something out of Robespierre and the French Revolution. It's like, I'm going to whip up a mob and then we're going to go take off someone's head because we want to, without any clear process in place. And I don't think that that's appropriate. I don't think it's appropriate for anybody up here. In fact, it might be something that might be appropriate to discuss in executive session. So, because I'm concerned that there may be things said that could be leading to defamation and other sorts of legal issues. Not that you guys intend it, but when you make statements in public that disparage somebody, particularly someone who may have business or some other aspect, that they can't do their work anymore. For example, alleging that the mayor over here is not truthful, that could affect his ability as a law enforcement officer to give testimony. So you better be careful when you're making these sorts of allegations, because they may have consequences far beyond this and extending into the future. The other thing I'd like to bring up, and I think it's been brought up a little bit here before, is I'm still uncertain why we need to go back and revisit the PUC application. It was on the May 24th, 2023 agenda. It was reviewed, and within that resolution, it was clear that it included a PUC application and whatever other documents that are necessary. And that would seem to include everything that's being done now. And so I'm puzzled why we are here. And I was also puzzled by Mr. McNeal's application to PUC, where he said it wasn't discussed, because in the minutes it was discussed. And so there seems to be some disconnect. And then the last thing in Mr. McNeal's submission to PUC, I think there's a lot of false premises and inaccurate statements disparaging Adrian Balcom. Thank you.
All right, I'll get the name right this time. David Box.
Good evening, David Box, 238 Woodbluff Court. So we're going to hear more this evening, and we do know that the city's lack of cooperation on a simple confidentiality agreement, and later the threat of a lawsuit, stopped the progress on RCH agreeing to transfer the system to the city back in May of this year. We'll also hear about how cooperation by Infomark, or with Infomark, forced RCH to go out to bid for help, which landed us ultimately with Aqua, and all the bad blood with the RCH customers. Ultimately, David Naylor was able to convince the board that the best course of action was not a sale or transfer, but to hire a competent general manager, one that this very city council had recognized with his own day for contributions to the community in the turnaround for Blackland Water Supply Company. The city should be applauding the progress made by RCH, not standing in the way. In just a few short months, RCH has demonstrated great progress. They got the Highway 205 line relocation back on track. They've completed the hydraulic study and sited new water delivery pipelines. They've had multiple meetings with North Texas to approve their pipeline location. They've even started the land acquisition for that pipeline. They're awaiting the North Texas board approval of a direct customer status. They've gotten an emergency intertie approved by TCEQ. That'll be a great short-term solution once it's installed. Why would the city want to slow down any of this progress with an ill-advised legal proceeding? The city's hostility to RCH's current success needs to end, and it needs to end now. The city already has lawsuits against it that it has no choice but to defend. Why add discretionary legal costs, costs that have never been put in front of a council to this equation for something that no longer needs to be done? The budget in the agenda for tonight's meeting shows that the city is currently 130% of its legal budget. And how much further is this council willing to stretch that budget, or go over budget, I should say? If RCH was demonstrating the negligence of the past, I'd be all for someone else taking over. But right now, that's not necessary. And the attempts by the city to further injure RCH customers is really unnecessary. All we want is water sooner rather than later. And the most expeditious way to water is through RCH. So I'm respectfully requesting that the PUCT approval be revoked this evening. Thank you.
Sherry, you're next.
Hello, Sherry London, 216 Harvest Ridge Drive. First off, on another item, I support Councilman Tucker in wanting a public budget workshop in the future. I think that would be beneficial to everyone in the city. Last September, RCH approached the city to talk transfer. But why did those talks stall? It's taken time, research, and more than a few public information requests, but I'm here tonight to share what I found out. The answer has actually been in publicly available documents for anyone who took the time to get them and read them. Before David Naylor was elected to the RCH board in April, the legacy RCH board's only actions were opening talks with the city in September and RCH Council reviewing the agreement in October, but nothing moved forward. But the record shows that it was under Naylor's new leadership at his very first board meeting in April when RCH finally voted to let the city inspect the system and to have their attorney prepare information for a member ballot on the city transfer question. So far, so good, right? All RCH asked of the city was a confidentiality agreement. But April and May RCH minutes show that RCH was still waiting on the city to sign it. Meanwhile, on May 5th, the RCH board called for an audit, and their contractor, as we know, H2O Services, suddenly quit. So RCH needed immediate help with operations and billing. But the city had a water committee advising them. So Naylor asked for help from the city of Rockwall and Blackland to keep the system running, and turned to Infomark, the city sewer contractor, to get a proposal for operations and billing. Since RCH was actually still expecting to transfer the system to the city, it only made sense to work with the people who would be taking over. And the record shows that multiple emails were exchanged to provide the details Infomark needed for their proposal, and for now they were cooperating. But on May 17th, the city showed its unwillingness to cooperate. Council moved to approve the RCH agreement, but the Mayor Pro Tem stated the city needed to wait a little bit as there were more meetings coming, including with a new water attorney. The motion failed. No signed confidentiality agreement. Then the city voted on May 24th to let the city administrator negotiate a voluntary transfer agreement with RCH and for the mayor to sign it. But none of that happened either. A June 1st email from Infomark referenced a detailed scope for a meeting that day about the RCH proposal. But on June 2nd, Infomark told RCH they couldn't provide a proposal. Their cooperation ended suddenly and without explanation. So after being strung along for weeks by Infomark and then being ghosted as to why, RCH sent out an RFP for help on June the 7th. Neither the Infomark nor the city submitted a proposal. Instead, on June 13th, the city responded by threatening RCH with a lawsuit for an alleged TOMA violation during the very meeting where the board had voted to issue the RFP. So the city denies a confidentiality agreement in May and threatens a lawsuit in June. But RCH is the uncooperative one? At this point in time, we need to realize that if the city and its partners had just cooperated right then, Aqua would never have entered the equation, and the city might actually have a water system. But the city's next step was a July 11th vote to send a notice of intent to RCH to take their assets through PUC regulations. On July 25th, Council updated us on the application saying it was in process, which suggested it would come up for a later discussion, review, and vote. After all, this filing would trigger legal costs for the city, expenses for a public hearing in Austin, which require council discussion, debate, and a vote. But that never happened either. We deserve to know what this will cost the city. And now to connect some dots. We've been repeatedly told the city plans to hand Infomark a no-bid contract for water services based on their existing good relationship, most recently at a town hall meeting in August. I find that fiscally irresponsible by the city, if not completely illegal. But it got me thinking. If I'm Infomark and I know the city's handing me a no-bid contract, why would I ever provide a competitive bid to RCH in June or respond to their RFP in July? I don't know when Infomark learned they'd get a no-bid contract from the city, but their sudden lack of cooperation on June the 2nd would sure fit the timeline. To sum up, I beg the city for transparency. I condemn any and all actions by the city that discourage cooperation with RCH to secure more water. And while the city did not cause the water shortage, they could have been instrumental in the support of a solution. In fact, they might have a system today if they'd only cooperated. The record demonstrates the city's more about getting a system for the city than getting water for the customers, no matter what it takes to accomplish it. And I, for one, am ashamed of how some on council chose to go about achieving that goal.
Thank you, Ms. London. Ms. Gina.
Gina Manis, 107 Cheney Place. Reasons the city should be the water providers with the process beginning on 9/28/22 and should continue the PUC process with Mayor Pro Tem Adrian Balkum leading the way. The city water utility, number one, provides controlled growth of developments to prevent overcommitting water more than the actual supply, as RCH has done many, many years. Number two, provides us with more water by becoming a direct customer with North Texas and protects our property with an adequate and quality water supply. Number three, provides increased financial oversight through annual audits, annual budget reporting, ongoing accurate financial reports that cannot be ignored, as with a small rural water provider like RCH. NSC, as a municipality, has a strong history of maintaining and staying current with all financial records, annual audits, and budgets. RCH has zero history of such records, and financial reporting has done nothing about it to recover them since obtaining new leadership. Number four, provides increased accountability to customers and state and local agencies as a municipality. Number five, the city brings increased resources not available to RCH, such as grants, revenue bonds, developer impact fees, to name a few. 98% of Texas water systems are run by municipalities, providing customers the best rates and the most oversight and accountability for adequate and quality water. Reasons why Mayor Pro Tem Adrian Balkum should remain in her position and continue to lead this effort. She is the most effective resource, as no one else has the knowledge, the thousands of hours of research, the local relationships, the ability to execute the necessary steps in becoming a direct customer with North Texas as our only solution, and in navigating through the Public Utility Commission, or PUC, process. The numerous public forums where she has willingly spoken and provided detailed information to help us understand the process and solution, which the city is following, includes but not limited to the following. Number one, regular council meetings with supporting documentation for the council. Have no idea where I didn't ever see that came from. Number two, a 2-hour long town hall meeting where she and Mayor Short offered and willingly, along with the city engineer and the Infomark representative, answered numerous questions with everyone on August 1st right here in City Hall this year. Number three, she also spoke at a 1.5-hour neighbor-led meeting with reps from each neighborhood where she and Mayor answered a detailed questionnaire developed by us, the neighborhood. And number four, HOA meetings, including Chisholm Crossing on July 31st, and HOA meetings at High Point Lake Estates, August 29, 2023. Number five, she has sent countless emails, phone calls, and meetings towards the city's water, providing more water. On the other hand, since RCH has been under new leadership since March 29, 2023, when Dave Naylor became board president, instead of completing the interim agreement process with MC, which began 9/28/22 over a year ago, Naylor did the following. Number one, started asking around the neighboring water providers, how much are you willing to pay? Knowing full well RCH had no financial records, including annual reports, annual audits, financial reports, or knowledge where RCH funds were, as the recent summary cash audit shows, and how they were distributed, nor a reconciliation of assets and liabilities. That's like asking someone how much you're willing to pay for a house as they hold you hostage on the porch, not allowing you to see inside, obtain maintenance records, and obtain an inspection of the house. How crazy. Number two, when none of the local providers provided a RFP, not wanting to touch the mess of RCH, he then wasted more of our time with doing a dog and pony show of 3 lame choices we sat through, resulting in the wonderful choice of Aqua. Number three, public outcry ensued from our basic research and facts about Aqua. Most notable being Aqua as a retailer could not go direct with North Texas Solution to get out of the rut of the middleman and their high rates. Number four, he finally realizes his huge mistake when on 9/15 North Texas replies to his filing to be a direct customer, asking for clarification with the relationship to Aqua, and he knew he had to end that relationship to stay in the game with MC. He tells us Aqua's 1.2 or whatever million billing error was the reason he breaks ties with them. Number five, he then follows the path that MC has been going on since 9/28/22, thanks to Mayor Pro Tem, of becoming a direct customer with North Texas. Why didn't he do this in March instead of chasing the money? Why didn't you guys object to any time that you filed that y'all talked about this, that you had objections, including the most recent notification on 7/11 of the notice of intent, which is the final? RCH wasted enough of our time, and we need to stick with it and let Mayor Pro Tem lead the way, and I finished.
Oh, your time's up. Sorry. Thank you, by the way, but your time was up, and these things had feedback. Tony, you're up next. You have the karaoke mic? All right.
Anthony Crawford, 104 Lavender Place in McLendon-Chisholm. The majority of customers want water overseen by the city of McLendon-Chisholm. Both several unofficial Facebook survey posts by surprised opponents of the city, because they took them down several times after they saw the city winning, and the survey published by the Herald Banner show that, in fact, what growing municipality show that the city is the one that people are wanting to have the water system. In fact, what growing municipality have you ever lived in where you didn't get your water from the city? And when did it not flow when you turned on the faucet? That happened in McLendon-Chisholm. There are voices on both sides, and obviously both sides think they are right. So how do you solve this? Let's review the current situation. The city of McLendon-Chisholm, for the benefit of its citizens and with the request of its citizens, needs to start a water system. Growth alone is dictating that. The RCH water system has a myriad of operational and administrative issues that at best will cause roadblocks with obtaining loans and grants. But they'll tell you they're doing all kinds of things to get started and get that corrected. One of them we just heard about tonight was land acquisitions. I've been to the last 4 meetings, and there hasn't been one agenda item about land acquisitions. So where are they getting the money for that? The president of the board has said that there is no immediate plans to take legal action beyond open records requests against H2O Services for failure to produce the customer's financial records. This should have been done the day H2O quit. They have failed to fulfill their responsibilities by not producing an adequate audit because H2O won't or can't turn those records over. The current plan of RCH is to attack the reputations of the mayor and Mayor Pro Tem for trying to correct this, for trying to do what people are begging them to do since the inception of our water issues. And add to that, to have an agenda item to take away the title of Mayor Pro Tem from Ms. Balcom. For what? For representing the citizens of McLendon-Chisholm by working hard with integrity to solve our water issue, for fighting for us. This makes no sense and doesn't come close to solving any of the water problems the citizens of the city are experiencing. There is one common sense remedy that would benefit both sides. Have an independent third-party state commission review the situation. I'm talking about the Public Utility Commission. This is the only viable solution and one that majority of customers want to happen. Remember back when the citizens of McLendon-Chisholm weren't getting answers for our water shortages. This hearing would get those answers. What are our assurances RCH can and will correct the glaring problems that have plagued water delivery for the last several years? What was the last solution? Sell to Aqua. That by itself doesn't give me a load of confidence. And let's not forget that Aqua is with us for the next few months, and we, the customers to date, have not been provided the documents that show they are going away. We have had citizens attending RCH board meetings noting those glaring problems as far back as 2014, and nothing was done. They didn't listen. So now we're being told 10 years later to trust that things are being done. The people want this PUC application to move forward. It will finally put everything on the line. Both sides will be able to present their case. Their decision will help everyone move forward. But know this, if you vote to take back the PUC application, everyone who votes yes will own our water issues come next summer. Remember how mad and frustrated customers were at RCH board and city council meetings? That should be a major consideration. I'm asking the city council to move forward with helping its citizens. If not you, then who? If not now, then when? Thank you.
All right, Miss Trudy, I know you're here somewhere. You're up.
Good evening, Council. I kind of want to touch on just a couple of things. First off, I wanted to touch on the removal of Adrian from Mayor Pro Tem. I do want to talk to you guys about, in the beginning when I was on council, just want you guys to know that I absolutely couldn't stand Adrian. Couldn't stand her. Couldn't look at her. It literally took me 3 years to even just look at her. Couldn't stand her. I mean, I'm not kidding y'all. I hated this woman. Hated her. It took me 3 years to finally gather myself together to go, what the hell is she talking about? So, because she was here for every council meeting. And I thought, well, I better just talk to her, and because she talks so fast, didn't understand what she was talking about. So I thought, well, I better go figure out what the heck she's talking about. So sat her down, said, can you please slow down and at least let us understand what she's saying? So finally sat her down, figured out she's talking about water. So started listening to her, started figuring it out, started actually understanding what she's talking about. So then I started going to some of the meetings with her, still didn't really trust her. And so I thought, well, she's kind of making some sense. So I started listening, started going to most of the meetings, started getting together, committee, all that stuff started coming around, started understanding, and the girl was making some sense. So I thought, okay, so all that came about, and started seeing how hard she's really working, and start understanding the girl is working hard for our city and isn't even on council. And then start realizing that
she had worked so hard, and I didn't even really realize that y'all know Rosini's, right? Well, I didn't realize how much I didn't like her, that I voted against Rosini's because she was so adamant about Rosini's, and I didn't want it. And it's only because she was so for it. And everything that she was for, I was against. And I realized I was just cutting off my nose to spite my face because everything that she was for, I didn't want. And so then I started figuring out, well, I'm being kind of stupid. So I then realized that Rosini's is awesome. And I started going, this is amazing. The girl's got some class. She's got it figured out. So I started listening to her and realizing she's working hard for our city. She knows what she's doing. She's smart. And she's not only smart, but she's really smart. And so just because you don't like somebody doesn't mean you don't have to like somebody to know that this person's working hard for your city. You know what I'm saying? So just because you don't like someone doesn't mean they're not doing the right thing. She's going by all the legal stuff. She's going by everything by the rules. And unless you're willing to do the work and put in the hours this person's putting in, I wouldn't remove her. And that's for me, being on that side and knowing what it takes to do that job. It's a lot of work, y'all. And those of you that have committees and that do the work and that do the meetings, you know what it's like to do this job. And those of you that are new or that don't know yet what it takes to do the meetings and do the stuff, don't know yet. You will know. I mean, you know what it's like to go to the committees, to do the I think you're on the roads, or no, what are you on, Brian? Yeah. So you know what it takes to go to these meetings. I'm sorry. But you know. So I would not remove her if it were me. Anyway, that's all I got.
Thank you, ma'am. Would somebody turn that microphone off, please? Thank you. All right, it's 7:34. Citizens' comments are closed for the evening. I do want to acknowledge each and every one of you, and I just want to say thank you for being polite, professional, and not getting out of hand tonight. That was very much appreciated, and I want to say thank you to all of you. We'll move on to the consent agenda. We have items 6.1 through 6.7. Is there any agenda item that needs to be pulled off for consideration? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve all of those 7 consent agenda items.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, I've got a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion on those agenda items? If not, all in favor? Aye.
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 Show that, I know your voice is gone. I'll look over. Show that unanimous. All right. Guys, the little bit of humor is Jennifer doesn't have a voice, and I didn't hear her say aye. She raised her hand. We're making little fun jokes while we try to do our job. Moving on to 7.1, review and action, Sonoma Verde Water License Agreement. Conrad, I know Stephen, I know you're in the back, so.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and members of the council. Enclosed, you have the license agreement that, if approved, would allow Blackland Water Company, sorry, I don't remember, I think it's a water supply company, to use the city water lines to serve Sonoma Verde. This is the license agreement is similar to the one that the city originally agreed to with RCH when Sonoma Verde was first built. This is just for the new phases that they're currently building, phases 3 and 5, that RCH has told them that they can't provide the water. So they're seeking water like other water providers, anticipated having it through RCH, and now they're looking, they sought out, and Blackland has a line real close, and they would like to, as they build out these 2 new phases, which is about, I believe 248 homes, of their next 2 phases, 3 and 5, that water would be provided on a temporary basis through Blackland's water, until the city has the ability to provide it for itself. So this isn't a forever deal. Could be based on what the city wants to do, but this agreement is not. So that's what they're doing. They're looking to do. It's pretty much exactly what the city did when they said, because the city owns all the infrastructure within Sonoma Verde. It's not in an RCH CCN. So they had to have the same type of license agreement for them to provide the water. RCH will continue providing water currently to where they're currently providing water. And this is for the 2 new phases, 3 and 5, that they're ready, probably already starting to build. As you mentioned, Mayor, the developer is here if you have any additional questions, but in a summary, that's what's going on with this water license agreement.
So it's just an agreement for 3-5 to be
Correct.
Serviced through Black.
To use our water lines. I mean, it'll be Blackland's water lines
Correct.
until it gets to 3 and 5, and then it will be using our water lines within those 2 phases.
Right. Stephen, do you want to come up just in case we have any questions? All right. Now that he's up here, does anybody have any questions for the developer on this particular?
Yeah, I wanted to know about the nature of the agreement between the developer, and RCH on release of 3 and 5 phases. Is there a written agreement? Is there a contract? What's the nature of that?
Yeah, currently, several years ago was a non-standard water agreement that was negotiated with RCH that included phases 1 through phase 5.
2014 agreement.
I believe so, yes, sir. And so as we continued forward with development, prior to starting the construction of each phase, RCH would provide what's called will serve letter. In other words, it's okay to move forward with the development of this and that they will serve water. We do have a will serve letter for phase 3 and 5, but what we've come to find out is we all know that they do not have the ability to serve. So we simply started looking around and had some good conversations with Blackland and about their ability to serve just phase 3 and 5. And so that's kind of what brings us here today, is this licensing agreement to allow the city's water lines to be used by Blackland to serve our phases 3 and 5, which are currently under construction.
Do you have any remembrance of the date of the will serve letter that RCH provided for phases 3 and 5?
I do not. I can certainly provide that to you, but it was just prior to when we started construction, which would have been May of last year.
And the arrangement that you have, the arrangement that you have with the city basically suggests to me that Sonoma Verde itself doesn't fall within the CCN of any of the water agencies out in this location, whether it's High Point Ranch, whether it's Blackland, or whether it's RCH. Am I correct?
That is correct.
So it's completely contractual between the city and whatever water operator that's available.
Yes, I think it was anticipated many years ago in that 2014 agreement that at some point in the future, the city might take over all of Sonoma Verde. So it was left out of anyone's CCN. So it's surrounded by blackland kind of to the northeast, and then RCH kind of to the southwest. And so that gives us, the developer, the ability to choose who we'd like to service.
Is there, for High Point Ranch, is there any proximity to Sonoma Verde at all?
No.
Okay.
No, sure not.
So in the phases 1, 2, and 4, in phases 1, 2, and 4, they're currently being served by RCH.
That is correct.
How many units are there, or hookups, I suppose I should say? Do you have an estimate of that?
In phases 1, 2, and 4,
I think it's about 800.
776 to 780.
Close to 800.
Mm-hmm.
And those are currently being supplied, or inadequately supplied, in my mind, through RCH. You'll have to respond to that. So this suggests to me that if the city decides to terminate the contract with RCH, then there might be an alternative provider for supplying water to those 800 folks over in Sonoma Verde.
I think the short answer to that question is what we're asking right now in the interim is that the contract with RCH, the license agreement that they currently have for phases 1 through 4, or 1, 2, and 4, would remain in full force, in effect. This is just the first step towards maybe this, once the solution gets satisfied, whether it's RCH, whether it's the city, or whomever it is, that those lines could be utilized in 1 through 4, 3, and 5 for whatever provider ends up giving the water. Since it's not in anyone's CCN, it gives the city the ability to do that.
If the city recognizes or believes that RCH has failed to perform to the contract that we had with them, we have the ability to terminate that contract. And I don't expect you to reply to that. I'm just making a comment for public consumption. And that would relinquish 800 units or 800 connections to another supply company. And I've had some conversations with Blackland, and I'm not saying they would be able to do that, but quite possibly they might be able to do that. That would decrease. Currently, RCH has 2,600 connections. And their allotment through their agreement, their contract agreement with Rockwell allowed for approximately 1,400 units. They're 1,200 units oversubscribed. And so the relinquishment of 800 units in the Sonoma Verde project going to Blackland or High Point Ranch or to whomever would decrease that amount that RCH would be providing water for, would be approximately, was it, if my math is right, it's 1,800. That would be approximately 400 more units than they were allowed. So that would diminish RCH to an operating level that they were constituted to work at to begin with. I mean, they were formulated to work at 1,400 units per their contract with the city of Rockwell. Now they had 2.1 million gallons of water available for that purpose. And if come next summertime, if you go along with this concept, they would have sufficient water to provide for that smaller number of connections, and Sonoma Verde would be basically protected and have sufficient water to get through the next summertime. I mean, this is how I'm looking at this, and it's hypothetical, but there's the possibility that this could come to fruition if we put our minds to it and worked along these lines. So just a proposal that I'll probably submit for next agenda, next city council meeting. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
I just have one question for you, Stephen. Because Sonoma Verde's a little more unique, it's not a mud, but it does have a pool.
Yes.
How does having right now, currently phases 1, 2, and 4, going through RCH, and the possibility, or what you're gonna do with 3 and 5 going to Blackland, does the mixture like that affect that PID in any way, shape, or form?
It does not. The first PID was, the water was included in the first PID. The second PID, which was 2 and 4, did not have any water in it. And phase 3 and 5, currently there's no water associated with the PID. So it shouldn't affect those agreements at all.
Because that's, I knew that PID, there's some, you got to be very careful with what you do, because
Absolutely.
it could cause problems for everyone. So
Yes.
that's what I wanted to know. Any other questions for Mr. Davis?
I have one question. So, under the terms, unless terminated by mutual agreement, number one is such time as Blackland no longer provides service to any retail water customer within the property. What's the likelihood of that?
The likelihood of that is simply if the city becomes a provider. The anticipation is that this agreement can be terminated based on that. If the city does not become a provider, then they would continue to serve as being a water provider for phase 3 and 5, regardless of what happens with 1, 2, and 4. The way that the agreement has been structured is it gives complete flexibility to you guys, to the city, that as you make decisions going forward, that this agreement can and will conform to that.
All right. So I guess what we're looking for now is a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve the water license agreement between Blackland Water Supply Corporation and the City of McLendon-Chisholm, Texas.
I've got a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, it's open for discussion. If the council has any questions or wants to discuss it? If not, all in favor? Aye.
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 All opposed? Oh, did you? Okay. And yeah, I was just to raise your hand because then we could show that unanimous. All right. 7.2, River Rock Development located in the ETJ Draft Development Agreement, first reading and overall presentation. As it says, folks, it's the first reading. It's just the reading and presentation of it. There's no action tonight. All right, Conrad?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and members of the council. River Rock Development, whose principals are here tonight, their attorney and their principal has fought the weather and the roads and made it here. Thankful to citizens' comments. And so they're here to make a presentation and discuss anything on the draft agreement, the tentative agreement. This is, as you said, Mayor, this is a first reading. This is just to get you to understand what's in here. Things can be taken out, things can be put in. Just trying to get the council to understand what's happening with this. There are actually 2 agreements that you received in your packet. An overall agreement, overall development agreement, and then a fire, let's see, what do we call it? A fire protection and emergency medical services agreement. And that agreement is pretty similar to the agreement that you've done recently with the Poetry subdivision out in that general area. But it also includes our fire chief and I have discussed a little bit with them, and so with that, we have their city attorney, we have Jeff Miles, who's their presenter, and
folks, while he's setting that up, 5-minute recess for those that might need to use the restroom.
I've always heard people tell how well-off people, and you can tell me if this is true or not, is their shoes that they wear and the watch. Is that true? So they wouldn't let, so they know I'm from the project, and I don't have a watch, so I'm straight too. Oh, I thought.
No, that's not. No, that's not even close to being that. Oh yeah, we got to change the lights.
Oh, I know. Oh, I know.
I just saw that.
Did he give you yours first? Ms. Chevy, he's handing things out. Did he give it to you first? He's handing stuff out. He should start right here.
He did.
Okay, just making sure that he starts right. Oh, is this what he's handing out? Just. Jeff Miles.
You did a better job than I did.
We're back and we're going to allow the developer to do his presentation.
Is it on? Good evening. Thank you, Mayor. Jeff Miles. I represent the property owner on this particular development. We're here tonight to just go over the outline of our development agreement that will be considered by this council in a coming meeting. I'm not exactly sure what meeting that's going to be on, but as soon as you guys are ready. This River Rock development, just to give you a general location, is northeast of 205. It's got frontage on FM 550 and 548. Skip to the next slide, please. So this is a general development plan. The entire property is about 1,867 acres. About 800 or so is actually in the ETJ of McLendon-Chisholm. At a past city council meeting, I think it was last meeting, the council approved adding a 600 piece of property on the south side of this to our MUD. The entire property is within a municipal utility district. We actually have two districts on it, called River Rock, MUD 1 and MUD 2. The dash line on the that you can see there kind of through the southern end of the property is the ETJ line. In our discussions with how we're going to approach this property and how we're going to develop and procedures and so forth, we had a couple of options. One is to deal with the county and McLendon-Chisholm. Since we're in ETJ, we have to follow the subdivision ordinance in McLendon-Chisholm. Or if we could enter into a development agreement with the city to bring all the property into McLendon-Chisholm, our lives would be a little bit easier if we could just only deal with McLendon-Chisholm and not have to go through the county as well. So we're trying to take, one of the reviewing parties, their performance of the reviews to either one or the other parties, either the county or to McLendon-Chisholm. So that's what we're trying to accomplish here. This particular 1,800 acres, about 30% of it is green space floodplain. So you can see that on the map. It's got two big conservation service lakes on it. We also have a
the outer loop that traverses the property as well. The outer loop is placed on here in what we believe is the preferred TxDOT alignment for this area. And then we've worked with adjacent property owners on coordinating road locations and so forth. So we've done quite a bit of work on that. The land uses on this are predominantly single-family uses. That's our plan right now. We don't know, the final. This is going to be a 10-year plus project, so we don't know the final land uses. But predominantly, it's a single-family residential project. It'll be a master plan community with parks, trails, amenities, school sites, fire station site. Everything that you would expect from a master plan community. We're going to have an HOA that we're going to create that's going to monitor the aesthetics and maintain the open spaces on this project. Water's been a big discussion tonight. We are in Blackland, SUD's CCN, so we will be getting water from Blackland. We're going to put about a $52 million investment into Blackland and bringing a brand new water source from North Texas into this area. That's going to occur over probably a 3-year period. And that water is needed really almost day one. We're going to start the water project as soon as we start development. Next slide, please. Ooh. Can you make that bigger? We know how to do that. Not sure. That was, particular slide was just going to go over some of the major bullet points. Like was mentioned prior to the recess, we have 2 agreements. One is a fire and EMS agreement. The other one is just a development agreement. Regardless of whether we enter into a development agreement with the city, the fire and EMS agreement is going to go forward. That was part of the condition of your approval of our MUD and your ETJ. So this agreement, as Conrad had mentioned, is almost identical to the Poetry Road agreement, the Wildwood project. Thank you. And with one exception, we're actually going to donate a fire station site with phase 1, and we're going to build a fire station out in that area. We haven't discussed or haven't determined the exact location of the fire station yet, but we're going to work with Chief on that. And what was been discussed is that we're going to build a fire station that looks like generally look like a single family home with an oversized garage to be able to handle the trucks. Your agreement that was part of the package that he sent out was actually a bit older as far as the bullet points. In that agreement, we talked about doing a temporary fire station, like a metal building, and then a permanent one down the road. We've scrapped that plan. We're just going to go ahead and build the permanent one to begin with our phase 1 development. So just ignore that. The final agreement that you're going to get that's going to look like an agreement to be signed, we'll have that detail in there where we're just going to do the one final fire agreement. As far as the development agreement, here are the highlights of that. We're going to obviously expand the ETJ to include the entire 1,867 acres. One thing that we will put in there is that McLendon-Chisholm will have the right to annex the land into their corporate limits in the future. Typically, in a MUD, that's done when all the bonds are paid off, or at least some of the development, or most or all the developer reimbursements are done. So that will be sometime in the future, but that is, a thing that this council can consider sometime down the road. Our MUDs will own and maintain all the roads, drainage, wastewater facilities. Blackland will own and maintain their water facilities. McLendon-Chisholm will review development plans for conformance to the subdivision ordinance. And we haven't seen, it's my understanding there's a new subdivision ordinance maybe being worked on or some amendments. So we're waiting on Mr. Coker to provide that information to us. So, and then the review fees, we're going to go ahead and pay you review fees as if we were in the city for those subdivision reviews. Similarly, we will do the same thing for home building permits. We will run all of our home building permits through the city. The city will collect those fees based on the current city's fee structure for structures. There is an existing interlocal agreement with Rockwall County. It's related to development in the county in ETJ areas. We need to amend that or determine somehow that it's not applicable to this project, since we want the sole reviewing and approval authority to be McLendon-Chisholm. So again, we're trying to go either one or the other. And so I think once we get the agreement done, that would be our next step, is to work with the county and the city to amend that agreement just for our project. Next page, please. Again, I've mentioned mandatory HOA will be created. You know, that's to protect the aesthetics and property values of the community. I want to maintain the amenities, trails, and parks. We are going to do a comprehensive trail plan for the community. We're going to take into account any regional trails that the county or anybody else that might have planned, and we'll include a concept of that in our development agreement. Also, McLendon-Chisholm will provide trash collection, recycling services. Again, we will pay that at the same rate that any other in-city customer would pay. And then same thing with animal control services, we do the same. So kind of at the very end, the city's going to provide a lot of these services. We're going to pay for those services to the city by contract between our MUD and the city. And those are the agreement, that's the agreement that's coming forward. So in conclusion, I'm here to answer any questions that you might have, and look forward to working with this council in the future.
Questions, guys?
I had a question about the annexation of the MUD into the city. It's a 10-year project, and so is there any consideration for annexing portions as they're completed? I mean, if we entertain that as a proposition, have you ever considered anything like that?
Yeah, I think where we would be able to do that is we have two MUDs. So once one MUD is completely built out, and those funds are reimbursed back to the developer and the bonds are essentially paid off, then that one MUD could actually be, that the area within that one MUD could be annexed into the city.
So the payback on those bonds is usually 30 years, isn't it?
Right, exactly.
So it wouldn't be before 30 years that we'd be able to annex?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
That's good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. You said you're wanting to take this out of the county, so I was wanting to know, have you currently presented this to the county, I'm assuming, at one point?
Yeah, we've submitted some plans to the county, the first set of plans, and what really triggered this was in the summer when the state legislature confirmed the census, and your population grew, and your ETJ went from half mile to 1 mile. So now that it's 1 mile, it's like, well, we were only dealing with a small portion of the project in McLendon-Chisholm. Now we're dealing with a much bigger part of the project in McLendon-Chisholm. And at that point, we decided to stop with the county and decided to say, is this a possibility to go ahead and let's just go ahead and work with McLendon-Chisholm exclusively. We're not trying to get out of the county. We're still going to be in the county. We're paying county taxes, all those kinds of things. What we're looking for is that just like being in any other city, a developer that would come into your city, they would solely work with McLendon-Chisholm. They typically would not go to the county for any approvals. So this would be a similar situation. It just happened we're just going to continue to stay in the ETJ and not come into the city.
My part two of that then is when you were presenting this to the county, what was their reaction, or what did the county tell y'all on the presentations, or how were they looking at this?
Yeah, I mean, they had their questions, you know, and concerns about traffic and water and all those normal things that you would be concerned about within a subdivision ordinance. You know, our County has a new subdivision ordinance that they're getting used to, we're getting used to. And so we weren't looking to circumvent or do anything. We were going to follow their subdivision ordinance. But what we saw very clearly was that their subdivision ordinance and your subdivision ordinance didn't match very well, and we're going to eventually come over and have this conflict between the two.
I have a question on the total number of units that you'll have between the two muds.
You know, it's an estimate right now, but we're probably going to have somewhere between 5,000 and 6,000 units.
Between the two?
Between the two, total.
What's your anticipation in terms of sewage and hooking up to any kind of sewage line out of Rockwall or anywhere else?
Yeah.
What are your plans specific on that?
So we do have a permitted wastewater treatment plant on the property. It's been permitted by TCEQ. We've met with North Texas Municipal Water District to talk about regionalization. We're in favor of regionalization where we can do it. They try to help facilitate that, but they don't. They don't build lines to our property. I wish they would. So we've talked to the city of Rockwall, had a long conversation with them, but the line that is down Buffalo Creek is not big enough for our project, and it's at capacity. Even though they're improving it at some point, they say it's still going to be at capacity. We are now talking to the city of Fayette and Royce City to see if we could get into their wastewater treatment plant, which is north of ours. But I think the way this is probably going to go, eventually we may go to that plant, but I think we'll start with our development with our own plant, and at some point be able to lift our sewer back over to their plant.
What's the distance between your plant and theirs would be? Is there
about 4 miles, 4.5 miles.
And that's not
which route.
In order to transfer waste?
It's a very expensive proposition.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Very expensive. North Texas and Municipal Water District, as we met, and Scott Muckenstern with Blackland was there as well. We had a good meeting with them. They recognize that this area needs a regional sewer solution, but they tell us that it's going to take the cities that are in this basin to come to them to get them to do a study and so forth. We're willing to pay our fair share of that if there's others, but we can't wait for them to provide the final solution. We've got to get going on our development, but ultimately we could hook up to any kind of regional solution.
I do. What were the total acres again?
1,867.
And you said 5,000 to 6,000 more homes on 1,867 acres. So my guess is, what are those lot sizes?
They're going to vary. They're going to be all the way 40 foot wide, 50 foot wide, 60 foot wide, probably some 70 foot wide.
I know, I forgot to turn my mic on. Thank you very much for your presentation. Like we said, today's a first reading, so there's no decision being made tonight on this. So thank you for your time. You have anything else on this one, Conrad? Okay. All right. All right, we'll move on to 7.3, discussion and action regarding appointing an additional member to the city council to the water committee. Mr. McNeal.
Thank you, Mayor. I asked for this to be put on here only because I have listened to everybody, whether you're for city or RCH. And what has happened is we've gotten to a point where, to make sure we're getting all the correct information, is somebody else needs to be on there, whether it's myself, Floyd, I believe someone said earlier Dan Tucker is still on there, but I don't know if that's actually, is that accurate, Dan? Are you still on there? Because I didn't think you were. That's what I thought. So then that would have been an inaccurate statement because it leaves us one council member short, which is why I wanted this on there to make sure that we were getting good transparency, another council member besides one. So that's why I brought it to the table, knowing that Dan Tucker was not on there anymore. Well, I would like to make a motion or move that we appoint a new member or another member to the committee, the water committee. Yeah. I'll let one of them go. I don't have a problem being on it, but I don't want to know. I don't have a problem nominating myself. I just don't know if they want me to do that.
I don't know if, can you nominate yourself?
You know, there's one aspect of this that is a little confusing because, and I kind of memoed you on this, and that is the water committee, as it was initially set up, and I was chairman of that going back a while. It was back in November, we had our first meeting, November of 22. It was basically a reporting committee. I mean, it had no authority. It had very little responsibility other than to report on anything having to do with water at that point in time. And so we had an initial meeting. We had our engineers come in and do an evaluation for us, tell us what they were ready to do and perform, but we never got into and do any inspections. And this committee actually was kind of dormant for a long, long time. It really didn't have any, like I said, any authority in terms of decision making. And so I'm looking at your agenda item, and it's really not that you want to have somebody appointed to basically a defunct, committee. What you really want to have here, I think, is another council member come on board and have equal status with the current decision-making party of the mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and city administrator. That's where you want to plant that other person. And to be real frank with you, it's about trust. I mean, there are certain individuals on this dais that don't have trust in others. And so if that's the case and this is the way to rectify, then I'm fine with it. But you don't want to put them on the water committee because they'll have no input. They have to be in the middle of the process where decisions are being made. And that is, as I just mentioned, with mayor and so on. The other thing is, I mean, there is an alternative to this that I thought about, or we actually could hybrid these two as well, is that we could just ask for, we could ask for an executive session prior to our city council meetings where we sit down and all we talk about is water, and we'll be getting it from 3 individuals, city administrator, the mayor, and Mayor Pro Tem. And then we'll be open to all the information and all the emails and everything else upon request. And there'll be validation by the fact that there's 3 of them reporting. And so if there's any discrepancies, then one person can fill in the blanks. I mean, that's an alternative in and of itself. Or we could have the hybrid, which is basically put on another member and then have that same session together with 4 people. It doesn't make any difference to me, but those are possibilities that we could explore, and I think either of the 2 would work. If that part of the city council that wants to have another member assigned, I'm fine with it. I'm comfortable with that. Is it necessary? I don't know, but if you feel more comfortable along those lines, then certainly we can do that. Turn it up.
Extremely wise words, and I appreciate that input. I'm open to either one of those ways. I do believe that we already do have 3 people up there that are the spokespersons for us, which would be Conrad, yourself, and Adrian Baucom. My concern has always been is the feedback, and Councilmember Tucker mentioned the word trust, And that's huge. It probably could have alleviated tons of issues had there been more transparency and trust. And so I would actually be good with either one of those, however that motion wants to go, whether it is an executive session prior to council and we are able to sit down and discuss and be transparent and be trusting in it, I'd be fine with that. Or we have another person on as a spokesperson. Either one, I'm telling you, I'd be good with. My goal in the whole thing has always been transparency is the best way. So either one I'd be fine with.
And one of the things about adding a fourth person, and this is just logistics, is making sure everybody can be there at the same time and aligning, appointments and that kind of thing makes it a little bit more difficult, not impossible. But, I would advocate the 3.
Let me ask you this, it's your agenda item, probably be your motion, because you started to make a motion. What if you leave it as is with a executive session for what, correct me if I can do it, water related only how do you terminate it to start at 6 o'clock, that first 30 minutes is all about water.
So let me make sure I understand that. Are we talking about having an executive session at the beginning of a posted meeting, or we're talking about executive session before the meeting?
Well,
starts?
I guess that's where you being the legal mind's going to have to say it is.
One is
specifically a closed meeting about water.
Well, we can have an executive session about that, but the first suggestion was legal, the second suggestion was not.
Okay. I'm trying to understand, but yeah.
So we can have an executive session, you can put it at the beginning of a council meeting, and that's not a problem at all, that's fine. We can't go and have a meeting before we actually start the meeting, an executive session. That's a problem.
Okay, gotcha.
And then second, who all would be at this meeting? I want to make sure I understood that.
I would assume it's the whole council.
Oh, the council? Okay, well, I heard before there was just a
Mr.
couple.
Conrad.
Okay. Yeah, and so you could post that under exception.
So it's doable that you
Oh,
have
absolutely.
that 30 minutes ahead is actually
sure.
that part
That
of
could
the
be
meeting.
item,
Okay.
1 if you want. Sure.
It's your agenda item. You tell me what you want.
Then I would move to have a early executive session prior to the council meeting for 30 minutes with council present and staff to discuss water.
As far as I'm concerned, this falls right with our policies. We don't even need a motion on it. You just make it an agenda item, submit it. We'll make sure it's on the next agenda.
I would be comfortable with that. Would we make sure that is on every agenda item going forward then so that way we don't have to keep submitting the same email?
Yeah, I was just going to say that we could have just a generic item that every city council meeting, and if you show up to that and there is and you decide you don't need to have it, you go have a sandwich or something.
I just asked, is it okay, is it at 6 o'clock, because everybody to not screw anybody's schedule, because all y'all get busy, so does everybody else.
Well, there does have to be some specificity to it. We can't just put water for the executive session. So, I mean, there's got to be some more to that.
Correct.
But yeah, when y'all let me know what it is that y'all want to discuss, I can formulate the agenda items. That's not a problem.
Okay.
Just FYI.
Thank you, sir. So you good with that? Item 7.4, discussion and consideration of appointing a new Mayor Pro Tem. Mr. McNeal?
Well, I know this one's going to be a very heated debate, and I did listen to the many comments today by the citizens, and I do. My problem has always been, and I'll fall back on transparency as part of this. It's going to fall back to me by example. We'll start there. As the Mayor Pro Tem, it's a ceremonial title at best. You're equal to everybody on the council. There's no extra power to it. There's no extra glory to it. It's just probably a little more work and a beautiful title that comes along with it. But I presented a few questions on the August 8th, 2023 City Council meeting which was brought up a few times tonight, where I just asked questions in reference to one of the items which was going to be discussed, which was the North Texas Municipal Water District letter. And when I asked those questions, I've been told that that wasn't an appropriate time. I didn't know when other time it could have been appropriate, since that was the letter we were discussing. So we go into an executive session where Adrian Baucom puts us in there, and I'm proceeded to be cussed out for about the next 5 minutes for asking questions, up to and including the exact words, and I will quote these words: "You don't know what the fuck you are doing, McNeal." And at that point, the fire chief had already come in and advised us that everyone outside could hear us, so that would negate confidentiality for those that are concerned with that. But she didn't stand down from there. She continued until finally all the staff came in and said this has to end. The next day, I learned that I was going to be asked for my resignation, which never came. I'm going to hold some of that back for right now because I don't feel some of the names need to be released at this time. And so I'll own that for right now. But then I want to push forward to RCH has a meeting where Adrian Baucom represents herself as the Mayor Pro Tem, and her 2 minutes are up. Mr. Naylor, the board president, advised her that her 2 minutes were up. She continued to speak, which we have that happen here from time to time, so we always understand those extra few seconds. Again, was notified her 2 minutes was up, and again a third time. About this time, the crowd even starts saying, "Sit down." I was even saying, "Sit down." Because when you represented yourself as the Mayor Pro Tem, you represented as the city. Had you had gone up there and said Adrian Baucom, I still thought it was crazy, but you represented as the city. And when you do that, how can we ask our citizens when they come up and that timer goes off for them to stop talking altogether at all? It just, to me, if it's a ceremonial title and it's something that is supposed to be respected, then that just, those two examples alone show no respect. And you know, while I may appreciate, and some people appreciate what she's done for the water, the title won't take away from that. She can still do that. She's not being removed from council. She's just not going to be the Mayor Pro Tem if it goes that way. If it stays that way, so be it. You know, that's why we have a council. It's called democracy. We don't always get what we want. So that's where I'm at for right now.
I'll entertain a motion on this agenda item.
Well, then I would move to, for us as a council to nominate a new Mayor Pro Tem.
All right, I've got a motion, and she's trying to talk the best she can. Councilman Hoffman seconded that. It's up for discussion. Daniel, I guess you're...
Adrian and I have had our moments in the past, but I decided a long time ago that I would try to work with her. And, and I think we've had honest conversations on multiple occasions. I find her to be very earnest and dedicated, hardworking, to the point of being compulsive. I know a lot of folks like that, and that's not a bad thing. There are some situations where, unfortunately, they went sideways and tempers flared and things were said, and that's unfortunate as well. And ultimately, Mayor Pro Tem is a representative of for the city in certain situations, and I think that is representative of the mayor as well. So on that point, I would like to see the mayor be part of this decision-making process. As far as her capabilities, I've already commented on that. I'd like to see a lot more respect on this dais every 2 weeks when we form. But again, I think the mayor will be part of this discussion, and I think he should add to it. I mean, obviously, the Mayor Pro Tem speaks for the mayor, who speaks for the city at certain times, and that relationship has to be one that's positive. From my reflections, I think that has been between the mayor and the Mayor Pro Tem. I think it's working. And so that's all I have to say.
All right, here's the thing. I can't be involved in the decision-making process unless it's a tie. But if you want my feedback, and this is for can everybody hear me okay? For everyone to hear, okay? As a mayor, I have made my mistakes. I've failed to properly manage these fine individuals up here in the proper manner, which has caused division, which has caused uncomfortable situations between them. It wasn't done maliciously. It wasn't done to create problems for you as our community. So I failed them, and I failed you. Okay? What I feel, and that's just me as the mayor, me as the individual, that we all have made our mistakes up here. Not with the worst of intentions, but we've all made our mistakes because we're all human beings. I don't agree with everything. If Mr. Keith Short, not the mayor, had his idea, we'd have a bourbon store and cigar place on 5 or 6 of these street corners because I enjoy cigar and I like bourbon. I don't get that choice. When I became mayor, my choice is what's in the best interest of now 6,000 people, not me. Okay? So I have to weigh that choice. Do I always do a great job? I can't say that I do, but my heart's in the right place. I think everybody up here's heart's in the right place. Brian and I disagree on a lot of things. We've had some heated moments. Dan, prior to this current sitting council when he came on, we've had our heated moments. Jennifer has been here a short time. I can't say we've had our heated moments, but we have things we disagree on. You heard from somebody earlier about Adrienne and how they had a huge distaste for her. I can say the same thing. We had our heated moments. But I saw whether we always agree with her way of doing things, I saw her heart was in the right place. And I looked past the way we fought 4 or 5 years ago. Okay? I'm one that if you know me and you know my wife, she will tell you my heart's in the right place, but sometimes my delivery sucks. Everybody agrees with what I'm saying, but the way I said it pisses them all off. That being said, I'm human. So is everybody else up here. And I think we need to give each other more grace. And whether we get along or not, we got to learn to work together. That's my only statement on all of this.
Just a couple things. One, I don't believe in putting family business out in public. We are a family. And in the context of the city and what's best for our constituents, there are the sausage that's being made. Some things don't need to be put out in public. This is one of them. So I will give my vote as a council member, and that's about as far as I'm gonna go as far as commenting in public about how we're handling our family business.
Brian? She's writing something, and I'm gonna say what she, oh, you good? Okay, never mind. All right, we have a motion, we have a second, and we are in discussion. All right, it will be a roll call vote so that we're very clear with Ms. Shelley. And the motion was to remove her, is that correct? Okay. Motion to move her, your vote?
Yes.
Mr. McLendon?
No.
She still gets to vote, correct? Ms.
No.
Hoffman? Ms. Hoffman is a yes?
I
Dan?
abstain.
You abstain? Which is the same as a no. Correct. Well, okay, I'm sorry. So we now have a tie because he's Daniel?
I just don't feel comfortable making this vote. I think that I feel very neutral on this issue. How many other ways can I say it?
So he's neutral, he's given his reason, so it's now a tie vote. That puts me in the hot seat, and I'm gonna vote no against it at this point. I'm with you, I agree with you, I'm in that middle ground, but I don't think actions are enough to remove her from that position at this point. So I vote no, so that kills that. You good with that, Shelley? Okay. All right, moving on to 7.5, discussion and consider a formal withdrawal of the application submitted by the city to the Public Utility Commission on September 29, 2023, and a cessation of any and all legal action against RCH Water Supply Corporation, including but not limited to the petition to be filed pursuant to Section 13.255 of the Texas Water Code. I'm going to narrate for her if I need to because Jennifer's having trouble speaking.
Been saving up all night. So I asked for this agenda item in response to the progress that RCH has made. They've hired the general manager, somebody that this council has commended. They're hiring staff. They've secured billing. They're making progress. What we don't need is, as they're making progress, to keep every step that they take forward, we send them back 10 steps. That's not beneficial for anybody. Even if we take this back just for 60 days, 90 days, and see what they can do. They own the system. They have the lines. They've got the progress in place. I think we need to give them a chance. And they're under new leadership. They're about to start replacing board members. Like I said, they've hired the staff. They've got their applications in for water. And I think that we need to back off even temporarily and just see what they can do. We can be a fallback, but I think that they're going to be if they can make the progress that they're saying that they're making, that they'll be the quickest way for us to have more water by next summer.
It wasn't a motion, it was her discussing why she put it out there. So I will entertain a motion on this.
I'd like to make a motion that we withdraw our application, and even if it's temporarily, but to withdraw the application and allow RCH to make progress.
I've got a motion. Do I have a second?
I will second that.
I'm sorry? You did? Okay. All right, it's now open for discussion. Dan, do you have anything? I'm going to go down the line.
I actually have something of a statement that I put together, and I can, if somebody has something that's shorter, because it might be a little bit of a reading.
Floyd, go ahead.
Why are you laughing, Floyd? Well,
I'm sorry, sir.
Please.
I just have a question. If we agreed, how long would it take for RCH to rectify the water situation? Do we know?
How much?
I can't have an answer for you.
So it's my understanding that they are going before, that they've got an application in for the North Texas Water District, because they are currently the owners of the CCN. They currently own the system. That is likely to happen. And so, you know, I would at least like for that vote to be held and allow them to see if they can at least get the contract.
So they're in the, it's my understanding they're at the exact same step as we are as far as trying to be a direct connect with North Texas Water Municipal District.
Except they already own the CCN, they already own, so we are a little bit behind that because we're trying to fight for that.
The only difference between us right now is that we currently do not have the CCN. We are seeking permission to be granted that service area through the Public Utility Commission. Currently, they are the CCN holder. However, it is not an application. They have to get approved by the North Texas Municipal Water District Board, the member city board. All they did was they sent in a letter. They were asked to reapply again, and then they had some questions. That's all it is right now. They have not been approved to become a direct customer with North Texas Municipal Water District. Yes, they have a pumping station, all that. And yes, they have some lines. We understand that. What we're doing is we're going to get permission from the from the Public Utility Commission. When you become a direct customer with North Texas Municipal Water District, you have to build new improvements, which in our case, we would have to get it from the southern line, which connects to the Tawakoni treatment plant. And so we would have to build new stuff, and it will be connecting to this area, which approximately takes about 2 to 3 years, and that's like in a perfect year. That's the long-term solution. Now, as far as like them alleviating, you know, any type of water shortage next year, all that kind of stuff, I mean, they haven't really figured out that plan. They also had a preliminary plans submitted to DCEQ. However, there was no agreement where they're going to be able to get water to be able to come through for that particular line off of 548. So the timing of this particular Public Utility Commission filing, you know, sometimes it takes 9 months. Sometimes it takes a year. It depends on whenever we get on that dock at that time. Either way, there's going to be a hearing to be able to decipher, you know, who's the appropriate party and all that. There's going to be a time to be able to address that. As far as their billing and all that, I mean, from my understanding, they're on the hunt to find a new CPA. And there's just a lot of unknowns right now. And in addition to that, they have not done any of their filings with the IRS. There's issues with their finances and all that. We're taking a really big risk right now that things are going to be having a major turnaround in like what, 60 days. I do not feel comfortable with that. I work and I serve McLendon-Chisholm. Okay, I don't work for RCH. I don't serve RCH. And that's the thing that we need to understand, is that we need to think about what is our public purpose here. And so I believe that this will be detrimental to our city or citizens by pulling this Public Utility Commission application.
The new general manager, was Robin Mayo. Has there been communications on like what's their plan on getting back on track? Like, have we had any? Okay, that's all the questions I have.
Brian, did you have a question?
Yeah, this is just a general commentary. A lot of this, I think, has been already covered to some degree with the citizens' comments, but this may reinforce at least my feelings about RCH and where they are and where we are at this point. So early back in the fall of 2022, the city had discussions with Jackie Pullen and Steve Hatfield, who both represented RCH. And the city had conversations with them. I had conversations with each. And at that time, I know that both of them, with a handshake and a promise, wanted to transfer RCH over to the city. And they believed, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but again, I did speak to them. They believed that was going to be what was going to be best for the customers of the community. I personally, I've said this in many conversations, is that I consider this a legacy asset. This is something that was put together by a lot of ranchers and farmers many years ago. And for the community that was rural at that time, obviously they're a lot more populated now, but it was part of the community that was formulated by these people who thought so much of their community that they wanted to pass this on to what became McLendon-Chisholm. And I respect them for that. 50 years of a legacy. So I see this as an asset, a legacy asset that would automatically transfer over to the city of McLendon-Chisholm once we are ready to take that over. And then at some point, this thing went sideways, and RCH decided not to make that transfer. And so we, the city of McLendon-Chisholm, we have a process where we can basically, and I don't like the term take over or overtake the RCH, but ultimately it's failed in its mission, I think, to serve the community. It has not prioritized, in my mind, the health, safety, and welfare of this community. And to provide evidence for that, it's simple. All the yards that burned up this summertime, all the trees and shrubs, the foundations that went bad. One of the citizens remarked on a $20,000 cost of some foundation work over in one of the developments here. That's due to RCH's negligence and inappropriate management of their own company. Property values have decreased. We have several homes in our neighborhood that aren't selling simply because people can't be assured they're going to have sufficient water in the next year. There's a lot of fear and trepidation on the part of the citizens that they themselves, the current residents, are kind of locked into this thing because it doesn't seem to be any kind of assurance that we're going to all have water sufficient to get through the next summer. In one incident, I've spoken to the chief on this. There was a fire over Sonoma Verde, and there were 4 agencies that responded to that fire. It was a home fire. And McLendon-Chisholm, one of the captains, and I understand this, and I don't want to over-dramatize this, but one of the captains would not let a hydrant be open to put the fire out. Now, there are extenuating circumstances, and under complete duress, they would have opened the fire hydrant, but the initial reaction was, we're not going to open up the fire hydrant. Let's see if we can put it out with the pumpers that we have in hand. And fortunately, thanks be God, they were able to do that. There was flexibility in the decision-making process, and I want to be fair to the chief because we had a long conversation on this, but just the thought that they were not going to be able to utilize a hydrant because there was fear that they were going to drain all the water out and the pressure was going to go out in the system. You can't live in that kind of circumstance. That's the description that I got, Chief. Well, that was the discussion we had, and that's the way I understand it. Then correct me. Correct me, Chief. That property was in danger. That property was in danger. And this is the point that we differed on. This is the point we differed on.
do not make a statement against one of my captains that he did not allow somebody to do that. I will not stand by for that.
We had this discussion, and this was the point of difference on this thing. It's fine with me. It's absolutely fine. I'm pushing on Chief, thanks.
Gentlemen, the argument doesn't need to be made here. He has his opinion after having discussions. Let's just leave it at that, okay?
So, that being said, again, the RCH has not prioritized the health, safety, and welfare of this community. I believe that the city could be a better steward for the resources that we have at hand. We can very quickly put operators, managers, skilled personnel into that at all levels of operation and take over this without any difficulty in my mind, as long as the city council puts their mind to it. Financing of new projects that might occur or come up for infrastructure purposes are going to be much more easily managed by a municipality versus a private entity. And certainly an entity that doesn't have any record of financial histories or books to present, we're going to get much lower rates than any private entity would at this point in time, especially considering the markets. One of the other things that I considered also was the fact that most citizens in this community want to stay with large 1 acre lots, which a comprehensive plan calls for. The interest of RCH as a company would be to actually extend out, as it already has, illegally, more connections. And so the greater number of connections that they can sell, which would be to high development properties, such as the MUDs going out here in the ETJ, they would thrive on that simply because they're selling more connections and thereby selling more water. Whereas the city would be able to control to some degree the number of connections that would go out into ETJ based on future predictions of how much water we would have available and what would be available for developments. And if there's not enough water over 10, 15, 20-year period, then it would limit to some degree the densities in those high development projects. So, you know, one person made a comment that there was 98% of all the municipalities operate their own water companies, and I don't see, there must be some reason that they're so successful in doing so. So again, I'm in favor of that for ourselves. You know, it's my real desire that RCH, and we've spoken about the possibility of them resurrecting themselves and reorganizing themselves and putting them into moving in a direction where they're going to be self-sufficient. I'm perfectly fine with that. I want them to build the best company they can, but only with the thought in mind that they were eventually going to merge with the city, who was going to be the sole operator in this community. My apologies, Chief. We'll work on this together. We've always had a good relationship. If I misspoke, you correct me, and I'll make the correction next time out. I didn't throw him under the bus, Chief.
Chief, he wasn't, I was listening carefully to what he was saying. He wasn't trying to throw you or your fire captain or any of the firefighters. He was making the synopsis that the fear of taking water out of that hydrant would take away from the customers that are already concerned about their water pressure. He wasn't trying to do that to be malicious.
Just the mere fact of having to consider that, Chief, had to enter into his mindset. That's the point I was trying to make. Okay, and that's the point. If I have to clarify, that's the point. that was an an additional factor when he's trying to put out a damn fire, that he has to say, I have to stop a second and think, am I going to drain this pump? And that's it. And he didn't have to make that decision then.
It wasn't a personal attack on anybody, so let's just leave it at that. Dan, I appreciate you saying
Yes,
that
sir.
to him, but I didn't take it as you were attacking anybody or trying to make somebody look bad. He was just trying to give an example. I expect you to protect people. Okay, well. All right. I've had somebody waiting patiently down here. Mr. McNeal?
Thank you, Mayor. So I'll follow in Dan there for a second. And nobody knows this. I don't even know if my wife knows this. I was actually a volunteer firefighter for 5 years in North Carolina and was actually awarded a medal for saving a kid's life for going in a burning trailer house, because that's pretty much all there are in Hubert, North Carolina. And I do remember this because the engine that we had 750 gallons of water on it, which usually before you even tie into a hydrant, you're pulling from that engine and you're already hitting water on fire before the hydrant's tied into, at least from my memory and the fire colleges that I went to. 4 departments responded to this fire. I went and visited the family the next day. I don't think the hydrant was ever an issue, and I do understand where Councilmember Tucker is coming from, that it is a scary thought that it did fall into the captain's mind. But I would agree with the chief all day and twice on Sunday that that captain would never have hesitated to put a fire out and tie into that hydrant, and the customers could have worried about water another day. And I would have been okay with that too. But I'm going to go ahead and go into what Councilmember Hoffman has put out here. And I heard some of the citizens tonight reference some dates. So on May 24th, the city did discuss a PUCT process for a sale, merger, and transfer, and we voted to approve a resolution which would authorize the city administrator to negotiate a sale and agreement with RCH. It authorized our mayor to execute the negotiated agreement, and it authorized the city administrator to file a sale, merger, transfer application with PUC. Everything about the agenda item, the resolution and the agreement, concerned a voluntary transfer of the system by RCH. So it's very key, because the word voluntary transfer of the system by RCH. The application the city administrator was authorized by council to file is the famous 20-page application that Mayor Pro Tem has referred to many times in town hall meetings. And I will also echo the reason I wasn't at the town hall meeting is because we were told as council members not to attend. Puzzling to me too, but it was because we didn't post correctly. Mind you, we had plenty of time to post correctly so that all council members could have attended. That has always bothered me. But it is not the same as the 7-page 13.255 application, which is an involuntary transfer of RCH assets to the city by the PUC. This was not just an administrative filing. It exposes the city and its taxpayers. I'll say that again. It exposes the taxpayers to legal expenses for a public hearing process and to litigation, which it was already mentioned that we are 130% over our legal. 130%. It's pretty heavy. So when the RCH fights back, as they have promised to do, be ready for legal. Be ready for your taxes. Be ready for fees, because we will be the stepchildren in this, and somehow, some way we will pay, whether it be RCH continuing or the city continuing. You will pay as taxpayers. That includes myself. None of these legal costs have been estimated to this council that I know of for any review and vote. I have not once seen anything with that at all. I would love to see where we're at and how much we've paid our water attorney so far, if that can be provided. No estimate of city expenses for public hearings in Austin have been provided for review. Yet two related items with less impact both have gotten discussion, a debate, and a vote. On July 11th, the council voted to send a notice of intent, the first step in many-step process, if the city later chooses to authorize a 13.255 filing. Then on August 8th, the famous meeting where I've been told I used boorish behaviors, which is democracy, just asking questions. Then on August 8th, the City Council had a very controversial discussion on the letter to North Texas, asking to become a direct customer. That item got a discussion and a vote. The only other time the 13.25 has been discussed by council in a public meeting was on July 25th, where Mayor Pro Tem Bauckham informed the council that the application was in process. I'm still trying to comprehend that one. To any reasonable person, this suggested future updates would be made once the application was complete for council discussion, debate, and vote. There's a material difference between a notice of intent and the 13.255 application, and that difference is financial. The notice of intent is designed by regulations to open a 180-day negotiation period between the parties, the PUC, and stepping in, the parties fail to agree on terms. Basically, in that 180 days, we should be acting in good faith to look for some negotiations, some agreements, to work with RCH to possibly not have all this drama going on with the council and the city divided, you know, brown yard, green yard, signing this one, no signing that one, MC square. I don't even know what that means anymore with the MC deal. But instead, we use the July 13th date in negotiating RCH since the city used the September 2022 date of the agreement prepared over a year ago. If the PUC accepts this, it will speed the date up for the public hearing. That is certainly seems the intention on the city's part since they claim their water attorney filed their application. Why didn't we use the notice, the actual notice of intent date of July 13, 2023? The city council has demonstrated that it is more interested in getting a water company for itself than getting water to the customers. I believe one of the questions by Council Member McLendon just moments ago asked, how long would that process be? Well, none of us have an answer to that, whether it be for the city or RCH, but RCH owning the CCN is way ahead of us on that. Unless we were to hostile take them over, which seems to be the road. City Council has demonstrated that it's more interested in getting that water. It's more interested in trying to shortcut the regulations than entering into negotiations. It's more interested in speeding a hearing than listening and negotiating. I know we're asked to listen and negotiate, and I did listen tonight to a lot of people. And there are a lot of things that are being said out there on social media, myself included. City Council deserves the right to vote on a 13.255 filing. It is not an administrative filing. It commits untold dollars towards legal fees that council should be informed of and be allowed to discuss. I asked the city to withdraw that PUC application until council is provided with the information it needs to review the fiscal impact to the taxpayers, and until they are allowed to discuss, debate, and vote on that information. Like starting your own fire department, starting your own water department is a significant step for any city. A formal public hearing should be held with presentations to the city, presentations by the city regarding its plan of action, projected cost to the taxpayer, and projected benefits to its citizens, including those not in the RCH, not in RCH's service area. Instead, the city is committing the city council little by little to a path that has never fully discussed or debated. So I'm asking the city to recommit itself today to being more transparent and reestablish the trust with the citizens. And we can start that today.
Mayor, might I just make one quick comment? I appreciate Councilmember McNeal's very articulate and talk and everything, but I think it's very, very important to stress one critical thing. Those legal fees are not me. Thank you. Those legal fees.
And Mayor, Since the fire chief so eloquently defended his department, let me real quickly just put off a quick misnomer of our accounting and finance department. Our fiscal year ended on September 30th. We don't have 130%. We haven't spent a dime of our legal fees this fiscal year. So we have the entire amount that's in the budget that the council approved. So we haven't spent any of that. That was at the end of the last fiscal year. And I'm pleased to tell you that the city, and it hasn't been completely finalized because we're still receiving invoices in this month to close out the final year, the books, and we'll do it with the audit and everything. But it appears that we're going to be over $700,000 revenues over expenditures in last fiscal year. So I think we're very robust in how the mayor and council has budgeted and how we've gone through our last fiscal year, and hope to do that and be very cautious with the city funds in everything that we do. So thank you, Mayor.
I have a question for those who are considering staying with RCH on the council. If you purchase a product and you've been purchasing it for years, and this company is falling short of providing you quality service, you know what you're going to get day in and day out. There hasn't been a change in years, but yet now you have an opportunity to not only take a different approach, even invest in your own business to provide that quality product that you know that you will provide. Why would you not take that? In addition, this particular company cannot provide financial proof of their service. So convince me on why I would continue with this particular company, knowing that I'm going to get a less than product for them. Well, when I know that we can come up with a plan that is much better and be much better for the city and much better for our constituents. So why should I stick with this subpar company that has been screwing us over for years?
Well, you get applause. That's awesome. I'll use your same analogy. Too close. I remember Boeing having airplane crashes and a few issues there. Just wondering if anyone still flies and possibly gets on a Boeing airplane. Pretty sure you do. We didn't stop flying Boeings. What they did is they restructured the board. They got a new CEO. They redid the company. And they relaunched the Boeings to be a pretty good plane again. There we are, flying on them. So while I will agree with you, Council Member McLendon, that this company, speaking of RCH, has let us down in the past, keyword past. And they are trying to move forward. I mean, the general manager they brought on has a freaking day in McLendon-Chisholm. I want to be him. But when a company's trying to restructure themselves and move forward, I'll pause right there for a second. Let's say you're building your home, Councilmember McLendon, and you're building your home and somebody just keeps throwing in these monkey wrenches every time. And so you thought you were going to move in January, but now you're being told it's going to be December. Who are you mad at? The builder or the one running the interference? No, I'm asking. Would you be mad at the builder or the one running interference?
I'll be mad at myself for not figuring out the issue and correcting the problem.
That's a safe answer. I was going for It's one or the other. I mean, you gotta be, you can't pull out, so, well, I would be mad at the person running the interference, so I'll just answer for myself. And that's what's happened here. When we have someone running interference, it doesn't allow any company, whether it be RCH or anyone, to be able to move forward. I mean, we have timelines that have been put out for anyone to see. We've had text messages that show this interference. We have emails that show progress being made and how everything lines up. I mean, we have a gentleman that's willing to throw every dollar he owns to ensure the city gets water. So I would beg to think that RCH is working forward and becoming a better company, and will probably have a great resolution. And, you know, that's just where I stand on it. And it's because I feel they get the water to the customers the fastest, to the citizens the fastest. And that does include citizens in the ET. And I do know my oath, and I know who I represent. I've said this to the mayor, and I've said it to everybody I talk to. If I can't sit up here and not think about the people that my decisions will affect, then I shouldn't sit up here. And that includes citizens in the city, citizens in the ETJ, unincorporated area, citizens in Heath, who are our neighbors, Fate, Royce City. I consider them all. But I know my duty is to the citizens. I know who elected me. And this isn't my chair, this is theirs. If they don't want me here, then they wouldn't elect me, right? And I've seen the comments where I ran unopposed, which is the best way to win. So that's where I'm at. And I also want to know who is behind the mailers. That'd be great. I'd also like to know who Ann Brown is. That'd even be better. But we'll see.
Look, I wish RCH the best in them developing their company. At some point, when we're considering the city and our constituents, and they're not getting what they should be getting, and we've given a particular organization opportunity over and over again, and they have not provided, then they don't deserve to be in partnership with us. And if they can't definitively provide proof on how we're going to move forward, which they haven't done. What I'm hearing is a lot of he say, she say. There's nothing being put in my face from RCH that is stipulating how they're going to move forward with a relationship. I asked a question about the general manager. We don't have that answer. So the answers we do have is, I believe in this council. I believe in the constituents who are our mentors and guiding us. I believe in this city. And together, we can create a much better plan, a much better system than RCH, from what I see and where I'm standing.
Have you seen the plan by chance?
From RCH? Where's the plan?
McLendon-Chisholm's plan. Have you seen the city's plan?
The plan is, once we get our CCN, we move forward.
That's what I'm asking is, have you seen the city's plan? Okay. Again, the same question. Have you seen the plan?
I've looked at this 6,000-page plan.
So you've seen the plan. You've seen the plan. I haven't seen the plan. Hoffman, have you seen the plan? But that's my point right there.
Both of you turn your mic off for a second. Stop.
That was beautiful. You're right. I'm glad y'all applauded.
Can you stop and let me finish? Both of you don't need to fight back and forth. The book he just handed you happens to be one of the next agenda items. Has he looked through it? No. Oh, okay, well, okay. It's presented tonight for each and every one of you, okay? but we're throwing back and forth when this is simply a discussion on whether we pull the application. We're getting way off track. You made your point about pulling the application, very well put together. I have nothing to say against it. Others have their opinions on whether we move forward or not. Okay? So instead of bickering back and forth, which is what we don't need to do in front of these people, let's sit down and vote on the motion. Motion was put out there. I'm sorry. Which one of you put the motion out? We've had so many arguments. Was it you, Jennifer? Okay. And you seconded it. Because Jennifer's having problems with her voice, she put a motion out there to withdraw the application submitted by the city to the Public Utility Commission on September 29, 2023, and a cessation of any and all legal actions against RCH Water Supply Corporation, including but not limited to the petition to be filed pursuant to section 13.255 of the Texas Water Code. Is that correct? Okay. All right, that was the motion. It was seconded. All right, we've had our discussion. I'm going to do a roll call vote. Mr. McNeal?
Yes.
Mr. McLendon?
No.
Ms. Balcom?
No.
Ms. Hoffman? Ms. Hoffman is yes. Mr. Tucker?
Adamantly no.
All right, there's the answer. All right, moving on to 7.6. Discussion and possible action to require City Council to hold public budgetary workshops in conjunction with publication of the first proposed budget of this year's budget, beginning with the fiscal year 2025 budget. The number of workshops and the date of each to be determined by vote of the City Council is requested by Mr. Tucker. I'm going to have to step out for just a second, but Dan, I like your idea. It's just finding how the mechanics to put it all together.
Yeah, and that's all it involves. I mean, this is something that I see in other city councils where they have an open discussion on their budgets. Commissioners Court, I just listened to 20 hours worth of their open forum kind of discussion, and it's just very appealing when all of us can review the budget at the same time. And okay. And you know, we're all going to have differences if we go line by line, and we'll all have opinions. And it's just nice to have the feedback from others to highlight what they think is important in the budget, what's not important in the budget, where we can cut money and where we're going to spend our money. It's a taxpayer's money, obviously, and we want to do what's propitious with those funds. And so I think a more open, robust conversation that surrounds that process is warranted. I know that in the past 2 years I've been on council, we have not had that, and I think that we've lost out because of that. The first year I served on council, we had that those open sessions, and it worked very, very well, and I think everybody was pretty well, considering compromises, pretty well satisfied with the process, and I think it certainly allows for the public to watch us go through that and to come up and make their comments as well that may or may not influence us. But I think we just need to have a more open conversation than we've had in the past couple of years.
So I have a couple of questions on that, because our budget season is usually between June, after, we get elected in elections in May, and then we get started pretty much between June and it ends, in September. Mm-hmm. And so when we have the budget workshop, they are open to the public. Are you wanting it to be more advertised to come in? Is that
it's an open city council meeting, and so it is open to the public. And I'm trying to reflect on the first year when I served. If there were comments that were allowed to be made, I don't know. We could formalize this in some fashion, but it was more of a conversation.
When we have the budget workshops, it's where I think citizens' comments are still open. It's been a while since.
I mean, that,
so I don't
that's just a process that we could review and look at and come to a conclusion as to how we would want to run that workshop. But it is an open conversation amongst us and with the city administrator and possibly the CPA also in attendance. So we would be, just a review of, like I said, it could be line by line or topics.
So are you wanting to change, because originally when our city administrator, Conrad Hildebrand, sent out the email to us back in April, this was the time for us to get prepared to say, hey, what is your vision that you want to work for this fiscal year, to come prepared June 3rd? What are some things that you want to put, maybe in the budget? And I know for myself, I was getting ready to be prepared to, utilize for the COVID funds to be going towards RCH related pumping stations and immediate needs, that kind of stuff. And so I'm just trying to figure, like, what could we do better from that? 'Cause I thought that was a pretty good workshop. I'm just trying to figure, like, what
the initial workshop?
Yeah, in June.
That was kind of a comprehensive approach in my mind. We had input from various individuals, whether it was a CPA, chief, I think, presented at one point. I think even some of the
we had all
there was a group
vendors.
of folks that presented, and that's fine. It's all well and good, and certainly we could incorporate that into a workshop. That would probably be the first one, but beyond that, it's just sit down, look at the budget, look at the numbers, talk about the numbers, see if they're valid or not, question their validity, all the above. I mean, it's just sit down, just shirt sleeves up and penciling things out or including things. Yeah. So that's what I'm looking for, and we can decide on how many of those types of workshops. I mean,
well, like if I came back, let's say for instance things worked out positively with RCH, like everything happened where they were transferred, we would have to submit those items in front of the city council for it to be approved. So then that would be warranting another workshop to like break down all these different types of finances that we would have to plan for. And so when we were leaving, I guess I can't remember which council meeting it was. I think it was in July, and I think it was our city administrator who was informing us, hey, we need to come back and talk about the budget. Let's talk about the items that you need to be inserted. And we had a reminder about it, and then I don't believe anybody contributed it. I think we had like another message again, and then no one else contributed anything else to that budget. So I'm just trying to figure, like, do we need to make a policy to say, okay, when it warrants that?
Absolutely not.
No,
not when it warrants it. At least that I do not like that at all. I think it should be mandated that we have these available. Now you're getting to the weeds in terms of RCH and all this other. That's fine. And let's just look at just an average budget that needs to be discussed. I think that it needs to be out front and center. It needs to be transparent. The way that we did this the past 2 years, in my mind, was abysmal. There was never more than 2 city council people that could meet with either the city administrator or the mayor at any one time. And I never met with the mayor, but I did meet with the city administrator on a number of occasions. But there could never be more discussion than would be allowed between 2 city council. I do not want that kind of secretive kind of approach to pushing through a budget where Brian might know a segment of it, I might know a larger segment of it, you might be very updated on the RCH and all that, but it doesn't collectively come together under those conditions. And so I don't know what the hesitancy is about when it comes to a public discussion of a budget, line by line item. I don't see anything nefarious that, but when it's behind closed doors, there's no public insight into what's transpiring, and I find that dangerous.
Mr. Hildebrand, would you like to contribute to how would you suggest from your standpoint in regard to how to improve getting input from council members during budget workshops? Because the staff actually works a lot, including Chief Simmons, in contributions to the actual administration portion of the budget. So Can you share some input?
No, thank you for that. I think it's with our budget, a smaller budget, as with any budgets, input is essential and it's important. There's lots of parts of the budget that are year after year after year after year after year that when we look at those line items, they're just, I mean, they're maybe the CPI change of it or different things like that. However, as Councilmember Tucker states, there are lots of staff requested, ongoing, and or one-time expenses that I think definitely needs to be looked at and talked about and discussed, and how they fit into the overall budget. Having multiple public hearings, no problem whatsoever. We can have as many as you want. We're required to have at least one by state law, one for our tax rate and one for our actual budget, and we've been holding those. But at all times, as staff, all the city council that wants to submit their information. I think what Councilmember Tucker, he'd like to not just submit the information, but discuss what he's submitting and what other people are submitting as a whole, is what I'm understanding you to say.
Absolutely.
And
in the public domain rather than
in the public. Well, I don't know. I don't know what in the back room means, but it's something that, yeah, we have no problem talking in a city council meeting, have those regularly scheduled, and there are definite dates and times that state law requires us, and certain days before this happens and certain days before a public hearing, and so we're really pushed from that first public hearing and then our preliminary or our tentative budget to our final budget. We have from like the first meeting in August to the last meeting in September, and that's state law trying to do what you're saying and make available to our residents or to the public of what's in the budget. So, I mean, I definitely think that we could work something out. I mean, to meet everybody's needs and wants in this, but it would require everyone to participate. I mean, more, I guess, if you have certain specific areas that you want to see done.
So I may have a solution. So didn't we just agree on like meeting 30 minutes prior, right? And I'm pretty sure every city council meeting we're not going to need to talk about water. So maybe we can prioritize the budget when we need to. Because I agree with you, like going into having a comprehensive meeting with everyone, like we didn't have our ducks in a row, like we should all at least be on the same page and know where everybody's at, and when we discuss it with potential partners, right?
And mayor, members of the council, it may help if, I mean, you have in your current today's budget a financial report. As we know, budgets are educated guesses. We use lots of different ways to figure out different line items, and we try to get as close as we can, albeit we always lean to being conservative in the revenues and liberal in the expenditures. So we fall on the right side of the scale at the end of the year. But we could go, and the monthly financials are to tell you how we're doing. I mean, so far, this percentage of the year, how we're doing. I mean, then we know exactly how much money is available in different line items and everything. Where instead of just giving you these every month, I could make a presentation on the financials, so you're seeing all those line items on a monthly basis, as well as Councilmember McLendon's whenever we want to take time in that time period before, so you can discuss it even more. But with the financials, you can look in, and I can show you the red flags that I see every month, or why they're not red flags, or just specifics that you may have about the actual financials that we produce for you every month, and that may help too.
Everybody's looking at me. I'm
make-
good with, I'm good with an idea and a solution with it. I get where you're going with it. I have 100% support behind you on it. It's just coming up with how we get to it, the meetings and stuff like that. I'm fine with it. We just need to come up with a formula that works for everybody.
I would be for passing this item tonight, and then we can work that out. It's not impossible simply because we've held these types of open workshops in the past. It's not an insurmountable problem, not in my mind. It's just, putting it together.
I'll entertain a motion on that we move forward with.
So I'll make a motion to, let's see, hold public budgetary workshops in conjunction with the publication of the first proposed budget next year.
So, council, the same as, I'm sorry, Dan, give me a second, please. The same as we moved with water, can we do the same with this?
My preference is not to do it prior to a session. I want a full-blown workshop session. There's only going to be probably two or three at the most.
Open it up to the public to come and.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, he's just saying separate budget.
Workshop session, not something prior to. Do we do it on Saturday? Yeah.
I just want to jump in for a second, because
I think, Adrian, you've gone through this process with Palumbo before, and we did it. Did they not do it during the week?
No, well, we had, the first one's usually on a Saturday. And the difference between the previous times was we invited all of the service providers, contractors, and all that.
I remember that, yeah.
But it was more like kind of like a presentation kind of thing.
Yeah.
Whereas this one, we all kind of like heard what their needs and wants are. Chief Simmons and his crew, they came in and they shared what they needed. So are you wanting to change that format?
That would be supplementary to a sit-down session where all the members of the council are seated, looking at the budget itself, going from page 1 to page 30, and going through line items.
Okay.
No, so all that is fine. That's preemptive to what we would do, sitting down here and discussing the budget.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I think I understand. I said, because here's the thing, when I'm trying to figure out like what.
Okay, so one of the line items I think had to do with the current budget, had to do with how we were going to devote our COVID resources.
Right.
I don't remember any discussion about that. It was $800,000. I think there was a comment at one point that it was going to go to sewer, and that was about it.
Well,
so I would prefer to have had a sit down where we had 5 members speaking to this issue and saying, okay, we're going to devote. No, it was not. It was either sewer or was the intersection up here, up front, where we were going to devote $500,000. I really would have wanted to have that discussion in an open forum where maybe Floyd was thinking about, let's pull back on that intersection that we don't even know is going to be built until 2028 or whatever, and use those funds because they're not going to be able to go in that direction because of federal law. Let's do something else with those monies, and particularly pinpoint where we're going to put that money.
So the 2021 comprehensive plan, that's the item was already dedicated. It led to like, this is the monies that we're going to end up using. The COVID monies were already set for roads and sewer, and that's where that's where the item was already. That's kind of like a bucket already set. And it was already done this way back in 2021. And when we started talking about other things that we could use the monies for, yes, that's whenever we should be talking about during the budget section, budget workshop.
So I have a great plan.
So, Mr. Holla, is a comprehensive plan, does that dictate specifically the restrictions in this case? The COVID monies that they would be, the direction they would be allotted to.
It was 2021, there was a comprehensive plan.
If it's a comprehensive plan, then that's, according to
legal
here, it suggests that it's not mandatory that
correct.
we
It's not
put those
mandatory. It's a guide.
monies in that direction.
It's a guide.
It's a guide.
But it was during that time whenever there was improvement of where the COVID monies could be used for, and then it became open to be able to use for other things. But at that time, during one of the city council meetings, and I don't remember which one it was, I'll have to go and track it down, but it was already earmarked for roads and sewer.
Yeah, go ahead and track that down and show it to me, and I'll be glad to report that.
It was, oh, you remember? Okay, our city secretary said it was a resolution. Was it in 2021? Okay, so.
So here's the great plan. We break it down in chunks, right? I'm not for like having multiple Saturdays for 6-8 hours a day over page 1 to page 30. So why don't we make it palatable for the council before we sit down with a comprehensive group? We can plan out and use our agenda, 30 minutes, 6 p.m., open it to the public, and then we can break down pages 1 through 3 or 1 through 5 and 5 through 10. And then by the time that we sit down comprehensively, then we have our ducks in a row.
I'm perfectly fine with this. You guys have wore me down on this one. Just as long as we get an open discussion and we have the full dais up here talking about it, I'm good to go with the 30 minutes and as many as we need. So I'll compromise on this one. I prefer my open budgets sessions apart from the other, but I'll go with it.
All right, I'm sorry, what did you say? I apologize, guys. I've got too many back and forth. All right, so are you? Turn your mic on.
I'll amend my motion to the point that I would like to have budget meetings prior to our ordinary sessions and relegated to 30-minute segments for as many that we would need as the council deems.
I've got a motion. Do I have a second?
That's not second.
Okay.
Or did you say? Oh,
Okay.
sorry.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And one hand raised, yes. All right. Guys, I'm sorry. We're going to try and get through this very quickly. I don't feel good. I apologize. I just don't feel good right at the moment. 7.8 is going to be pulled off of here and put on the next scheduled meeting. That's the very last agenda item. 7.7 is a presentation of the McLendon-Chisholm Water Acquisition Project Notebook. Ms. Falcon. Guys, it's nobody's fault. I'm worn down and I'm tired and I just don't feel good. It's just a fact. And Ms. Hoffman, God bless her, I know allergies. Right now my allergy pills are working because I know how she feels too. So we just don't feel good.
Okay, so for the past 2 weeks, I've been working on this binder, which is over 600 pages of just water information over the almost 2 years. And I had to call it McLendon-Chisholm Water Acquisition Project Notebook. This spurred because there were quite a number of questions and concerns and understanding, like, what is it that we're doing over here? And we wanted to make sure that, yes, we have a record of this. We're going to have this available to where if you want to have open records requests, it will be available through print. Our city secretary will be the only one to make copies of it. So just want to make sure that that is received tonight. And Mary, you're going to have to sign it as into record. I guess that's right. Record.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So I wanted to go over a quick list of things that
we get a digitized copy. How we do.
Yeah.
You want to carry something around with it.
Yes. One of the first things that I did as coming on to this water committee is I started visiting water supply corporations, and I'm very thankful for the openness that we have. We have very good relationships with Blackland Water Supply Corporation as well as High Point SUD. And they were very gracious, and they handed me this book called the American Water Works Association. It's Water Operator Field Guide. It's a very good read. I actually read this book. And I'm actually on Gift of Water, Legacy of Service, A History of the North Texas Municipal Water District. I'm on chapter 4. It's very good. You can actually get the PDF version on the North Texas Municipal Water District website if you want to check that out. So, so one of the questions that was asked was like, who are the engineers? And on November 9th, 2022, that motion was approved. The authorization for professional services for water system acquisition due diligence with Teague, Knoll, and Perkins, TNP. And Councilmember Tucker motioned to approve it, and seconded by Councilmember McNeal. There was a couple of questions that was brought at the dais, but they didn't iterate what that question was. However, they decided to go into executive session probably about, it was actually 2 hours and 42 minutes. So I'm assuming they went over the 12-page document, which it shared the actual plan on November 9th, 2022, the TMP document, the 12-page document. So staff background that said the City of MC is in the initial stages of acquiring a certificate of convenience and necessity from RCH Water. This process will require complete review and analysis of the system. This contract is for TMP engineers. To complete this process, contract costs $75,000. So the plan A was, you know, you often heard me say that this application is a filing with the Public Utility Commission. It's about 20 pages. And then originally the agreement that was provided to RCH because they came to the city in September, and then they took in the agreement. This agreement is a timeline of events and included expectations for an election to take place, in addition to records, all the data that will actually be input into this application. And that's like, if everything was agreeable, everybody's kosher, everything's being transferred, no issue and all that, and that would be submitted to the Public Utility Commission. So they would also require an audit and a system analysis, and after the PUC filing has been approved, that, you know, where we will be granted the CCN, then we work on the process to become a direct customer of North Texas Municipal Water District. Well, that process is not a filing. It's not an application you fill out. It's a letter. Why? Because they're following tradition. The letter is explaining, like, yes, we want to become a direct customer. And then you are providing the required items that they're asking for to be a direct customer, which includes that obviously you have to have the CCN or some sort of approval by the Public Utility Commission that you can service this particular area. In addition to that, it's all of the items that are expected to be facilitated at the new delivery point, because you have to build the new system that's going to be there. And so once all of those things are produced, it's kind of like a contract. It gets sent over to the North Texas Municipal Water District's Executive Committee. It turns over to the Water Committee, and at the Water Committee level, once they review, verify all the information, then if it passes everything and meets all their checks and balances, it goes to the North Texas Municipal Water District's board, which is all the member cities, and that is where they approve you to become a direct customer. And then at that point, you get a letter or memorandum, and then it literally says the longitude, latitude of all your location, and it says, you know, that you're a direct customer. And then you actually start the construction process and all of the things that are required that you, or what you said you were going to do with your becoming a direct customer and all that. Now, obviously, we don't have that agreement, and so back to back to May 24th.
Y'all have a problem with me, don't you?
You're gonna leave? You're gonna leave?
I really don't.
Okay, okay, I understand.
Alright, guys, I'm gonna walk out of here. I don't feel good. All they've got is this agenda item and then it's up to corrections. So, at this point, it's 9:48. I'm gonna walk out of here. She's gonna take over.
You can feel better.
Huh? Yeah.
Okay. So on May 24th, we had a resolution, and at that resolution, the second section of the part that was not ever really discussed and understood is take all other actions and execute all other documents necessary or requested to complete the acquisition and transfer of the RCH water system and customers to McLendon-Chisholm, including but not limited to an interim management agreement and water system asset transfer agreement with RCH and any other petition which may be filed as authorized by Chapter 13 of the Texas Water Code. So prior to any council meeting back then, any time, we actually worked with our attorneys. We have a process and understanding, like when we submit our items for agenda, and this is our mayor who came up with the idea, like we need to make sure that we're doing better on making sure that we have checks and balances, and the items that we're submitting meets all the requirements needed for, you know, the Open Meetings Act. And so, so it goes to the city secretary first, then the mayor, and then follows to the city attorney. So with that being said, all of these items that is of question, we used our water attorney and we used our city attorney in helping us curate these documents that's seen on all of our these agenda items. So I'm a little bit concerned that when we have items come up on the agenda, you need to be asking questions to those on staff because they most likely are the ones who are helping us curate these documents. And this is what their role is, their job is. And so, yes, this document was definitely approved to do that process. Now, another question. So, Plan B, that explains Plan B. So PUC filing. Then we request to become a direct customer, North Texas Municipal Water District, and then delivery point improvements. Now you're probably wondering, like, well, why did we do it in August? Well, the August 8th letter. Well, because when we went to our North Texas Municipal Water District, we had a meeting there, and they explained to us the process. They broke it down. Hey, we're going to email you all of this information to make sure that you're meeting all the requirements. And so we had the expectation that we were going to be filing right at the beginning of August. But then when our water attorney came back with the maps, it turned out the maps were not amended correctly. It did not include Chisholm Crossing 2, 3, and 4. And so we were told by our water attorney, you need to make sure to go to High Point SUD to get a letter that's saying that they're not going to object to that. So that's what we did. So they only have one meeting a month, okay? And so we had to work with that. And so we ended up going to High Point SUD when we were talking about the right-of-way ordinance. And so while we were there, we asked about a letter that they would not object to that. And they did. They sent it over that week. And so that it was included in the information, and also the maps were updated, which also takes time to be done because the water attorney has to send it to another person in our office for GSI to correct. Okay. So the question about the water committee. Also on November 9th, it was created, the creation of the new water committee. The process of developing and transitioning the RCH water system into the city of McLendon-Chisholm water system will take a substantial amount of time and effort. And I will say I apologize publicly that it wasn't going to take 2 weeks to actually get the application done because there's so many parties that are involved to make that happen. So it would take approximately 3 to 6 months to get that efficiently done. So the development of a city council-centered committee will allow 1 or 2 council members to become extremely well-educated in the overall process and help needed city council action items to have additional and needed information and support. Also, this committee will be able to do many items to keep the process moving and achieving the overall goal of transparency and communication to our residents, and ultimately having a great water system for our residents. City Council, Chair, and City Administrator, and plus 2 residents and possibly a 3rd resident. The committee responsibilities shall sunset upon the total completion and operation of the City McLendon-Chisholm water system. So questions about like why did we not have input? This is from a person that was on City Council for approximately 9 months from the November 9th passing of this. There's a staff report and the contract was attached and or included in the agenda packet. I don't understand why we're having that discussion, because at that time those questions should have been asked and at any point. And so one of the questions was also asked, did Adrian Balcom meet with Blackland? Yes, we did meet with Blackland. And the question was asked, what was discussed? Well, we talked about a lot of things, such as we talked about operations, management, requirements, system administration, meter reading, water boundary map, sample reports, audits, regional planning, operation tours, SCADA systems, TxDOT monthly meetings on relocation of water lines, expectations in North Texas Municipal Water District customers, McLendon-Chisholm presentation to the City Council for February 23rd, 2023, and then how can we help RCH into the interim? And then we also talked about secure lock boxes and press release information. One thing that we did learn from High Point is that High Point spent about $1.2 million to put in an 8-inch line to connect to the City Hall. The city didn't contribute financially to that improvement. But overall, we wanted to improve our relationships with our water suppliers, so that's really good. And I'm happy to report that both Blackland and High Point both agreed that anytime we have new developments that they would want to join us in those conversations and stuff, so we can plan accordingly. So one of the things that's been a very hot topic, and I'm going to bring this up because it needs to be said. So when dealing with the whole RCH process, originally there was a discussion back in April where RCH actually came to our city administrator and he was asked, you know, how much is he willing to, how much is McLendon-Chisholm willing to buy RCH? And that was in front of our engineers and in front of our city administrator. That happened in April. There was a discussion at the April board meeting for RCH about the confidentiality agreement. Mr. Jackie Pullen, the president of RCH, he actually stated that he was describing his scenario, and he point blank said that they were needing to do an election, and that election needed to happen with their shareholders first before they even remotely sign the confidentiality agreement. And then they gave discussion, they motioned for the election ballots to get processed and all that, so that did happen. But as far as like the whole requirement thing, that kind of just somehow maneuvered itself into the May discussions between the RCH president and the RCH board. Then May 3rd happened where the staff did quit, and also the person who was the H2O Services owner, she point blank said that I needed the contractor for RCH to help her with the numbers, and then after that she was going to help with the transfer, but after that she was going to be done. And so she was supposed to supply some sort of jump drive and some latest financials for meter reading. And to my knowledge, that did happen because I was aware of it. It was delivered to Mr. Naylor. And then there was a concern about what was happening at the pumping station, and I definitely was involved at that point where I recommended for him to definitely contact Blackland, that they would be able to probably assist at that point, because there was definitely a concern of what was going on out there. And Blackland did a tremendous job in helping. They went over and beyond, helping with line breaks, helping with the station, but there was never agreement at any point that they were going to read the meters. In addition to that, no, I'm sorry, there was no discussion where we as a city have ever told Blackland, no, you can't do business with RCH. Now, I will say that I personally made it a point on that May 3rd meeting. I asked for Mr. Naylor or at least 2 representatives to meet with me after I came into office, which I was going to be sworn in on 17th, and that we were going to have a meeting the following day. They already knew about all this stuff dating back since April, and it reminded again on May 5th. Then we had a reminder email, and Mr. Naylor decided to cancel twice to come to the meeting on May 18th. And so we had a meeting on May 18th. We invited the engineer. We invited Ms. Trudy Westner, who was the former Mayor Pro Tem. The mayor was there. Both attorneys were there, and of course our city administrator was there. Also, Blackland did come, and it was at that time that we were informed that you know, they have decided that they were going to end their verbal agreement on June 8th. And then we also learned some other things at that point that led to what I already knew of some concerns regarding their financial records. So as far as like the discussion about, you know, this confidentiality agreement, yes, I was a part of that discussion on May 17th, but I needed to wait and confirm some things that needed to be discussed at that the next coming meetings. So then on May 26th, Mr. John Washburn, he's the general manager for High Point, well, he called me after he shared with me a screenshot of David Naylor's text to him. While on the phone, we talked about what was going on, and I just asked him, so are you going to offer services to RCH? And he said, High Point is so overwhelmed with their own projects that there is no way that they can consider operating the RCH system. Well, what was interesting is that, you know, people were saying, well, did you tell High Point not to do business with them? Well, in this particular instance, this happened a week later, so he already made that decision. He already decided that they weren't going to do that. Then on, I think it was June 1st, then there was also a discussion about Infomark. Infomark contacted us on June 1st. There was a Zoom meeting, and it was with their executives. And the reason why we had to have a discussion with their executives is because their regional officer, who was our representative here, he ended up having a discussion that he needed to talk to his executives about. And basically, at the end of the day, they made a business decision that they chose not to wanting to do business with RCH. So, just so you know. Yeah. Now back to this. Got one more. Yeah, June 1st. That was June 1st business decision. That's right. Did she mention something about an interconnect that might have given us some relief? Okay, that is, there was on December 15th, 2022, there was a Blackland tour overview. There was discussion of if there was an unforeseeable incident then maybe we can talk about like having a location off of 548. None of these things that we've already kind of had plans already in motion and talks about like the things that we are wanting to achieve and some ideas. But then later on, when I ended up meeting with North Texas Municipal Water District in July and explaining, you know, what we were thinking about doing the following weekend. That weekend, I was going to meet with the Rockwall County steering committee, I was going to bring up about having like some sort of interconnect and all that, and they just point blank told me like there's no this is the infrastructure improvements that y'all are responsible. This is the responsibility of that entity that's what you're supposed to be doing. This is not really called for an emergency, and so they just broke it down to me that that would have to be approved by several parties, and so it's not that it's not illegal, but it's like you have a process and you have to follow a process, and there's a reason for it because there's other entities that have to pay for water underneath the wholesale water provider. And in addition to that, you have to get board approvals. And so we just want to make sure that when we're doing things, we're not just going to sit there and say, oh, we're going to open a line of dirt and then put a pipe in. You have to follow our process, and there's reason for it. And there's accountability and transparency. You have to have documentation and all that. And sometimes I think that at the end of the day that people are misunderstanding that that wasn't actually going to provide the water that was needing for a short period of time. So let's see what was in here. Yeah, so that answered the question that was asked. Did she mention anything about giving an interconnect that might have given us some relief? Yes, we talked about it, but that wasn't going to actually give relief the way that you want to believe that it will give relief. Also, what is the cost for us to get in the water business? That's a great question, because again, this is pretty much like approximately 5 stages, and we have an idea based on financial records retrieved from the city of Rockwall and the regulatory assessment fees. That's a report that's at TCEQ, and I have them backdating from 2022 to 2017, and so that's like approximately like $4 million based on that. And then of course you have to review the Rockwall billings, like you have to pay for the water itself, and it ranges between $68,000 to $280,000 for the monthly fee. And then you also have to consider like the immediate needs, like, what are the costs for the automatic meter devices? A SCADA system is about $45,000. For an emergency meter vault, that was like a $200,000 cost there. TxDOT relocation, that was probably about $4 million. And we haven't reached the opportunity for an appropriate assessment, which would involve like a third-party entity to review the actual water system facilities. That is if we were going through Plan A. But if we're going through Plan B, then that will involve like entirely on our engineers when we get to that level. And whenever we get to that level, I mean, it's going to be a pretty big deal in front of the city council. I mean, this is not something that's just going to be dug in the middle of the backyard somewhere. I mean, we were literally going to have a discussion with our bond personnel, and like Hilltop Securities is our provider or vendor. And in addition to that, you have to budget for this kind of stuff. We're going to figure out like what type of vehicles are we going to use? Like, is it going to be through bond elections? I know a lot of people hear about that, but one of the things that I wanted to touch base on to educate people on is revenue bonds. In addition to that, developer impact fees, and also there's also options of loans. So we would go over all of that before we make any major financial commitments, because it takes a process to get all that stuff financed. So. So TMP, whenever you're reviewing this agreement, that's like 12 pages, it included the breakdown of all the costs needed to do various tasks. So you would have to look at the contracts appendix, and it will talk about like the row supervisor. It breaks down like all the surveyors, things of that nature. I mean, it was very comprehensive, but it was very good, and they tell you exactly how much each person what the cost of that is. So they were very transparent in that. But and eventually the city council would have to consider adopting an ordinance for a public works department to ease into transition. But based on the timeline that I created, which by the way was in your budget workshop, in the city council's budget workshop binders on June 3rd, there was an actual timeline that was in there. And again, it's like 5 stages, and it was going to be about 3 years before we can even consider a public works department to ease into that transition, because we already have a contract agreement with Inframark, and then they have a 40-person call center, and also a crew that would have been able to help us get through all the lines and anything of the transition of doing the improvements and things of that nature, so. Okay, so does the city have engineering right-of-way acquisition on staff who could take point on this project? Well, that comes back to the TMP again and the type of services that they would be providing. Did we, as a council, at any time give our Mayor Pro Tem the authority to speak to Blackland and advise them on anything with an interconnect with RCH? Again, on May 24th, that was in, you know, in section 4. And yep. So anyway, so all these things will be submitted for into our secretary. She'll be the only one that'll be able to copy it. But if any time that anybody has any questions for that's water related, I would hope that they would take the time to actually reach out to me. I would be happy to show any of the documentation. I think that there is definitely an interest to learn more. I'm happy to do more questions on the website again. I just want to make sure that people understand that there is a plan, there's a process to it. There's an understanding that this is not something that's going to be done overnight, but you have to plan accordingly. You have to work with your contractors, and again, it will be involving like engineering, our financial advisors, and this is something that's going to be definitely on city council agendas. So, okay, I gotta get back to it. Okay, does anybody have any reports to give this evening? Mr. Tucker.
Just some kudos to the fire department. Believe it or not, hey, actually, we get along very well. That was one of our moments that was kind of interesting, but we'll get over it. Yeah, this past weekend I took a CPR class that was the first CPR class provided by our fire department, and it was Scott Martinez who provided the oratory for that. It was a great class. It was a little bit long, but that being said, it was very thorough, and we had about 10 people in attendance. He plans on having those CPR classes being provided once every 2 months to 3 months. So look forward. I think the next one's going to be in December, but well worth taking.
All right. Mr. McNeal? Mr. McLendon? Okay. All right, I think I'm done for the evening. I am adjourning this meeting at 10:10.